Episode 106 of the HHH Racing Podcast is sponsored by the Adelphi Racing Club. Adelphi is a racing club of like-minded people who enjoy horse racing and the camaraderie of being a part of something bigger than themselves. It is a true community. Adelphi's founding partners have all owned horses and other partnerships and syndicates, as well as on their own. And the overarching goal of Adelphi is to blend the benefits of solo ownership without the administrative hassle and the thrill of the partnership experience. Adelphi offers an interactive ownership experience with real-time access to other partners, trainers, bloodstock advisors, and other members of the team. Adelphi partners receive frequent multimedia content on their horses, including videos, photos, and multimedia content. Adelphi is an exciting class of yearling prospects by horses such as Street Sense, Laubon, Frosted, and Taprit. And by the way, I have partial ownership of two of them. And we'll be launching a brand new claiming and private purchase partnership in January. Join the club. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start episode 106 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Good evening and welcome to episode 106 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Howard Kravitz. I am so excited for tonight's show and my fantastic guest. I know we have a lot of viewers watching tonight. We'll probably have a record number of viewers, so please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If you have not subscribed to this show, please make sure you do that and then hit that notification bell so you'll know when new content will arrive. And also, smash that thumbs up button, which will tell YouTube that this is an exciting, informative show to watch. You can see my name tag there. You can follow me on Twitter, at @HKravitz. And on the scroll down below, you can reach me through email, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Very exciting news, ladies and gentlemen, to announce. The HHH Racing Podcast is now on Spotify. That's right. You can listen to the show, the audio version, anytime you like on Spotify. There are already 2 shows up on Spotify. Just go ahead and subscribe, and you can hear the shows on Spotify. We'll also be on Apple Podcasts and some other platforms upcoming, but we are now on Spotify. Check that out. And then finally, the Race Day blog. It's been hot, real hot. 15-1 morning line horse that unfortunately went off at 4-1 in the last race at Gulfstream, but we hit that horse on the Race Day blog. Very exciting ABC selections, much more detailed analysis than you'll see on this show. Spot plays, price plays, an ABC ticket for this Saturday's Pick 6 at Santa Anita will be available on the Race Day blog. Please purchase it. Great, it makes a great New Year's gift. Highly recommend you do that. It's inexpensive, and there are some excellent pieces of advice on there. The HHH Racing Podcast, Race Day blog. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot wait to bring on this gentleman. I've been watching him for years. I know a lot of you have been watching him for years. He is right now on the West Coast, most likely hanging out in his palatial estate, waiting to come on the show. Let's bring on, from TVG, the one and only Todd Schrupp. Todd, how are you doing tonight?
Well, Howard, I love your hat, first of all. And I should have shaved had I known I was getting that type of buildup. But I don't have to work till tomorrow. So it's nice to actually have kind of a bit of a vacation beard here. We had racing, obviously, done on Sunday. And then I don't have to work until Santa Anita tomorrow on Friday. But it's going to be probably one of the best stretches of the meet so far. And that includes opening day from a horse player's point of view, with Cal Cup on Saturday and holiday racing on Monday. This is going to be a great 4 days coming up at Santa Anita. But my week's already made. I got a chance to finally be on Triple H.
Well, I appreciate that. And listen, I want to, by the way, before we even start, I want to first of all, compliment yourself and let everyone know. I reached out to Todd. I met him. Everyone saw the little picture of the two of us there before the show. I saw him at the Breeders' Cup and had a great chance to talk to him. But the first time I actually met you, Todd, and you meet a million people, so I know you don't remember, was actually Florida Derby Day at Gulfstream. You were in the tent there, just not too far away from the Tiki Bar. You guys know where you are, of course, down the stretcher. I sort of yelled your name. I said hello. I said it was my first time at Gulfstream. I said I'm from Chicago, and you gave me this hat. So thank you very much for doing that. I said, where's Dave Weaver? And he said ice cold, and you said, oh, he'll be back. But anyway, it was great to meet you. I don't know if you remember, that was quite the day when Maximum Security wired the field in the Florida Derby, 2019.
Yeah, and we were all wondering how could a maiden claiming $16,000 horse win the Grade One Florida Derby. Unfortunately, we found out later about why that may have happened. But the great joy of mine when it comes to TVG is getting out of the studio and being on the road. And I've kind of staked that out early on in my career. And the big reason for that is because I get to meet people like yourself. And it's amazing to me how many people come back and will say, you gave me this hat 5 years ago. I'm like, well, I've got a new one. We can update that hat. But it's the interaction, because when you're sitting in the studio, there's the stage manager, there's obviously your on-air partner, and there's a camera. You know there's somebody watching, but you really don't have the same energy like you have when you're at the racetrack and someone will come up during a commercial break, introduce themselves. And look, the great thing about horse racing is meeting other horse players. Even if I didn't have TVG as a means to do that, going to the racetrack and meeting new friends and learning their approach to the game has made me a better horse player. And we can talk about books, we can talk about many different ways to learn this game, but there's no better way than essentially the communion that we have as horse players and getting a chance to meet each other and learn something as well. So being out on the road, getting that chance to meet yourself at Gulfstream Park a few years ago. And I have to say, we meet a lot of horse players from Chicago, especially when we're at Keeneland. But horse players from Chicago travel anywhere at any time for a big event. So I'm not surprised that we first made our connection down at Gulfstream Park for the Florida Derby. But it seems like Keeneland, they come out in full force because obviously it's not that far of a drive down from Illinois. So good
Sure.
to be reacquainted with you after all these years.
Well, Todd, if you've been paying attention to the contest scene, which is something I've gotten into the last few years, Chicago horse players are hitting it out of the park. My good friend Matt Miller won the BCBC at Del Mar, and he's a Chicago guy. So we have a lot of people watching the show. Just want to recognize, Todd, you'll see comments and questions on the bottom of the screen. C Money, one of our great viewers. C Money, thanks for joining the show. Daryl, thanks for joining the show tonight. Kyle Roscoe. Kyle's a young man who's been on, actually a guest on my show, Todd. He used to work at Arlington. He just finished college. He's going to Vegas, so he needs some good picks tonight. Kyle, thanks for joining the show tonight. Really appreciate it. Listen, folks, I'm not sure how long we're going to last in it because Todd was so gracious. He said, Howard, I'll stay on for 90 minutes. So, folks, we might take a little break in between, but the first half of the show, we're going to talk to Todd about his life, some exciting things that happened with TVG and things before that. And then, of course, we are going to handicap, folks. And kudos, by the way, Todd, to Santa Anita management on what a week is. This weekend is a little bit dry in terms of stake races. And they said, hey, let's pay out the mandatory pick six. When I saw that came out yesterday, my ears perked up. What a great, fantastic idea. So it's a mandatory pick six payout. Hopefully we won't get Boris load, which means basically someone hitting the pick six tomorrow, right? Like what happened at Gulfstream last weekend. We don't want that to happen, Todd, right? Let's have this thing
Well,
carry over to Saturday.
and that was actually an interesting story because it was someone in the Lexington area, and he claims he didn't even handicap. He went actually to some great Twitter resources, put together some picks, put in $1,080 ticket, was beating himself up because the favorite won the first leg and he was too deep. It could have only been a $540 ticket, is why he was upset to start with, and then he ends up walking away with $1.2 million before taxes, which turned out to be a little over 900,000 after taxes. So these men, but as you said, there has been Daniel Borislew, the late Daniel Borislew was kind of the first person who pulled it off. where everyone was looking for the big mandatory Saturday, and then he put a large ticket in on a Friday and took down the whole pool. And so a lot of players have done that. With Santa Anita, everyone knows, field sizes are an issue from card to card. Having already looked at the Friday card tomorrow, we're not going to have anyone taking down a single winning ticket. And what's great about the day that they designated, it's Cal Cup Day. So you have sizable fields. It's going to be a challenge. You asked me to put together a ticket that would be a little under $100. And ultimately, I came to 115.20, and we'll explain it later. But I have a horse in there who's an also eligible. So there'll probably be a scratch in there. So it'll end up coming to be about a $96 ticket. But whatever your comfort level of playing, Saturday is going to be a phenomenal day with that mandatory payout.
Oh, for sure. We have a comment. I've got to show this. I don't know if this is true, Todd, but if this is true, uh, this would be hilarious. According to C Money, I don't know if you know him or if this is true, but you you owe 2.5 million to that library. I'm sure you just got that. That's just pocket change for a Todd Schrupp. So I'm sure you got that hanging around somewhere.
I was about to say I need to hang out with C Money at the racetrack, but then what if C Money actually is a librarian and I do owe that money? But he knows the story, because I'm often asked about when I started in horse racing, and there's a longer story to it. But that
Of course.
particular part of it was when I was in Minnesota, when I was just growing up, and I
Yep.
wanted to read anything about horse racing, and I checked out Andy Byer's book, The Winning Horse Player. And from there, I made my own speed figures. That's before speed figures were ever published in the Daily Racing Form. As a matter of fact, the first time Buyer speed figures were ever published were in a defunct publication called the Racing Times. It was a phenomenal publication. In fact, a lot of it was in color. Even the texture was different than the Daily Racing Form. But I made my own figures, and it's that book that I had from the very beginning, that I checked out from the library, and I still have to this day. C Money, very, very, very good memory.
Up, Todd, you froze up a little bit. We'll go. There we go. Okay, you froze there a second. Yeah, it's a great story. Todd, I'm just, listen. This podcast started almost a year of the day. I do have journalism background a little bit. We'll get into that, but really, I'm just been a racing fan for 30 years. I love talking about horse racing. I'm a high school math teacher by trade, and I said, you know what? I think I could do this podcast thing. I was on Matt Bernier's show 3 times on the In the Money Network, and I work for In the Money Media a little bit as well, do some side work for them, and almost 700 subscribers later and 45,000 views later, here I am talking to you, which I never thought would happen. So it's a pleasure to have you. Todd, I have a whole bunch of questions to ask you. I'm sorry, did you want to say something there?
Well, no, I think it's very important, because a lot of people come up to me, especially all ages, but a lot of people come up to me who might be starting their career out of school in journalism and say, well, how can I get involved in horse racing? And there wasn't always an easy answer to that, but technology has leveled the playing field as far as access is concerned. I remember when I started out in horse racing at Canterbury, I was in customer service, and I walked into my boss's office, and she had a 3-ring binder. And I said, what's going on in the binder? And she said, it's something called simulcasting. Like, what? She's like,
Yep.
we're going to show races from other parts of the country, and you can bet on them here at Canterbury in Minnesota. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now I got a chance to be on the ground level of a network dedicated to horse racing, and to watch the expansion of TVG, and then watch the opportunities open up for everyone. The
Yep.
fact that someone can have a podcast like yourself and demonstrate their abilities, and you are fantastic at what you do, that was not available when I first started in horse racing. When I first started in horse racing, you went to the racetrack, and you had to wear many hats. Whether it was customer service, whether in my case, my first job was at Canterbury for 4 years. Financially, they were always struggling, and then I was out of a job, and all I wanted to do was work in horse racing. I was like, I'll do anything to work in horse racing. So I literally spent a year trying to find another job after Canterbury was done, and nobody would take me because I didn't have enough experience. And I'm like, how do I get back into horse racing? It's the middle of winter. You know what that's like right now. It's the
Of
middle of
course.
winter in Minnesota. I'm unemployed. I'm so miserable. And all of a sudden, I remember going back. I was living at my parents' place, and there was a voicemail, and it was from Tony Bentley, who was the track announcer at Canterbury Downs when I was there. And he said, "Hey, brother," he would always call me brother. And he said, "A friend of mine is the general manager at Calder Racecourse down in South Florida, and they need a paddock person." That's another thing that was just kind of starting when I got into horse racing. The person who would stand out in the paddock, give their observations for each race, and go out on the simulcast network. That's one of the that was kind of the beginning of all that when I started in horse racing as well. So a guy named Tony Kobitz was leaving Calder. I flew down in March. I think there was still snow on the ground at the time in Minnesota, and interviewed with Ken Dunn. And before I could fly back to Minnesota, he said, "We'd like to offer you the job." And I tried to play it cool, but I needed the job. And I could not wait to get back into horse racing. And so, I've been fortunate along the ways. I do believe people in the end, though, make their own opportunities. The best things you have are the people relationships. And that's why it's important to me to this day to be out at the racetrack, meet our viewers, and make that connection. And it may lead to a connection that the person's a friend. It may even lead to someone working at TVG. I'm not inviting everyone to come up and drop their resume off. But what I'm saying is technology has made it readily available where you're essentially doing a resume reel every time you do the show, and you've
Absolutely.
attracted advertisers because you're very good at it. You've attracted a loyal audience because you're very good at it. And I love the fact that podcasts and technology have allowed people to get a chance in this industry because there's so many talented people out there. Although sometimes I go on Twitter and there's people who think they probably have more talent than they actually do.
Horse
But
racing Twitter is a crazy place, which I've learned in the last year because the first tweet I ever sent out in my entire life was a year ago for this podcast, and I started to get into horse racing Twitter, and I realized got to be a little bit careful what you say because everyone on Twitter knows every winner of every race, of course. So a lot of red boarding going on Twitter, Todd. But
look, always put your blinkers on, and
for
you're
sure,
focused. You know what your show, what you want your show to be. And I deal with it not as much as I used to when I first got in, but it's the Charles Barkley rule. If you walk into a room of 100 people, you've just got to automatically assume 50 don't like you and 50 do like you. And so the main thing is the main thing, and that is how do you want your show to be? And you've created a great show here, and it was the same thing with Canterbury, and with my career along the way from Canterbury to Calder, and then ultimately to TVG. In the
right?
beginning, TVG was reviled, and it was hated, and I was at the forefront of it for a variety of reasons. There's a picture behind me here of the original show I worked on at
I can
TVG,
see the
and
desk
the
up
original
there. Yeah,
person I worked with. Yeah, you can see a little bit. I should
a
probably
little
should
bit.
have set it up better, but technically I'm not as good as you in putting these things
Well, Todd,
together.
if I can interrupt you,
Sure,
you must see my rundown because you've already like answered a bunch of questions. But if I could just interrupt here a little bit because
sure.
I've got some surprises for you tonight. I think you're gonna like. So you see on the bottom of the screen, talk just a little bit more. You grew up in Minnesota, and we have a lot of viewers, by the way, on this show that are like me that are experienced handicappers for a long time. We also have some newer, younger viewers, which was makes me very excited to have this podcast. And I know we're always looking to grow the game. So tell people a little bit, very briefly, about where you grew up and your some early days at Canterbury Downs, now Canterbury Park.
Yeah, so my dad was in the Marine Corps, and so my first visit to the racetrack was Del Mar. We take the bus from Camp Pendleton in Southern California out to the racetrack.
Sure.
But eventually, obviously, he got out of the service, and Minnesota was always home. So we went back to Minnesota. It's where I went to grade school. It's where I went to high school. And about the time I was a junior in high school, they built a racetrack, Canterbury Downs. And so from that being a 7-year-old going to Del Mar to now being a 16-year-old going to Canterbury, there was a long gap there. But I had obviously a different appreciation for the races at the time. So I was getting ready to go off to college. And I also was a pretty good basketball player at the time as well. But I just wanted a summer job. And so I went out to Canterbury and I had read that book by Andy Beyer. I wanted a job at the track, but I also thought that I could be a professional horse player. So I read his book, and it was such a romantic thing to read about Hialeah, to read about South Florida, to even read about Timonium and the tracks in the upper Northeast and playing the
Sure.
races. It was also at Canterbury that I got a chance to meet Steve Davidowitz. But when I went to Canterbury, I wanted to be able to play the races in the afternoon, so I applied for a maintenance job. And I just wanted to work in the mornings and then play the races in the afternoon. So when I went in for the job, the person listened to me and said, horse racing is new here. We need people like you to help teach people about horse racing. You should not be working in the mornings. You should be working in the afternoons. And so my first job was in customer service at Canterbury. The questions were anything from, where's the bathroom? Where's a particular food stand? But it was there that I got to meet some of the most interesting people. One of my longest colleagues and friends is Matt Carruthers. And I ascended to supervisor of customer service, and Matt was one of the employees that I hired. So Matt and I go a long way. But one of the early interesting characters I met when I was at Canterbury was a guy, and I didn't know what he did at the time, but one of the best horses I've ever seen was a horse called Who Doctor Who, and he was a horse that raced in Nebraska. He was one of the top sprinters in the Midwest, and he'd go to all the big sprint races around that circuit. So he came to Canterbury, and he was running in our big sprint race that day. I was working customer service, and a guy walks up, and he's wearing this unassuming painter's jacket and just very, you wouldn't recognize him. He wouldn't stand out in any kind of way. Walks up to the customer service booth, and he's got a $10 bill in his hand. And he goes, "Is there show wagering on the Who Doctor Who race?" And I thought, wow, this guy's a real beginner. He's going to bet 10 to
Yeah.
show on the 2 to
Jeez.
5 favorite. So I said, "Yeah, there's show betting on every race." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, thank you." And he starts to walk away. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to stop this guy. So I said, "Sir, a couple of weeks ago," and I read the story, a gentleman flew in from Philadelphia to play Who Doctor Who was running at Exarban in Nebraska. And by the way, Nebraska, the minimum payoff to show is $2.20. It's not 2.10. So the guy turned around when I mentioned the story to him, and he goes, "I know, that was me." And I said,
Oh,
"Oh." He
jeez.
goes, "Where's the $50 minimum window?" I said, "Let me walk you up there." So we walked up there. He takes
Wow.
off his jacket. And again, there's a generation who can just hop on TVG and bet whatever they want.
Of
This was
course.
not that time. So this
No.
guy had to fly around the country when he wanted to bet horses big to show to be a bridge jumper. So he takes off that unassuming painter's jacket, and he's got a plastic bag, and he's draped in $100 bills. He
Wow.
bets $72,000 to show on Who Doctor Who. So he got 72 $1,000 win tickets. He put them in his pocket inside the inside the jacket, and he said, "Do you mind if I hang out with you the rest of the day?" Because he had to wait for the race to happen. It was like 6 races later.
Oh my
Turns
goodness.
out he had gotten his degree in mathematics at Michigan State, and then he proceeded to tell me his stories, his triumphs, his disasters, betting Groovy in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, who would finish fourth. I
Yeah.
mean, he had bet a large amount to show, and that was the first time that I it kind of solidified. I want to meet other horse players. This is the most fascinating world that I've been in. But it all started there in Shakopee, Minnesota.
Well, listen, I for the first time in my life, I went to Canterbury last year for In the Money Media. I write the blog for Canterbury Park last year, so I covered every race day. First time I was a public handicapper. Covered Canterbury, had some good success, but covered Canterbury Park. Let me tell you something about Canterbury. I don't have to tell you, but just the people out there. I've already spoke. What great people up at Canterbury Park. I'm sure you know some of the people there. Jeff Naday, who's the media relations guy. I met Brian Aragoni and Angela Herman do a fantastic job on the simulcast feed. And here's our first surprise here. This gentleman, who I'm going to go ahead and bring this on the screen, I'm assuming you know him pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here. And you'll see him pop up in a second. But this gentleman I also met, and he was on this show in May, and I asked him what makes Canterbury Park so great, because as you know, it's a very familial atmosphere. They really have a lot of people. So I think you know
I was there.
this guy, right? So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's hear from the great announcer Paul Allen, Todd, on his opinion as to why Canterbury Park is so wonderful.
To call the first race in 95. Here I am 2021 with the Sampsons, Andrew Offerman, and so on. But for those of the cynical ilk with the way we do things, Minnesota is not a heritage horse racing state. So therefore, the majority of the people we get might spread out a blanket, eat food, drink beverages, and bet $40 on the whole day. But racetrack management around the country acknowledges us, and when jockeys, trainers, and owners come in, and they see, that we average close to 7,000 a racing day. We have Thursday night races with like 12,000, and we used to have 20. So we're always growing our attendance and our concessions, and I think quietly that's the envy of the industry to be.
Any comments on that, Todd? I'm sure you agree with that.
Well, and here's the thing. First, credit to Paul Allen. It says a lot that he still calls the races at Canterbury because he's one of the premier radio announcers in the NFL, obviously for the Minnesota Vikings. But one, because he loves the sport, and two, he also has a great commitment to the Sampson family and what they've done for racing. He continues to call the races. But he's absolutely right about that. It's a different type of horse player at Canterbury. And I knew that from the very beginning, but it was in the beginning, horse racing was new. So you expected that, people learning the game. But that type of horse player remains to this day. So when I was there were all kinds of alternative entertainment that was out there. We would bring, from
Corgi races they
yeah,
have now.
exactly. I can remember Harvey Wallbanger, the racing buffalo. He would be in between races. They had the Renaissance Festival, which is still a yearly tradition in the area. So then we had medieval knights out at the racetrack. And I remember when Canterbury, it was a huge sensation in the beginning because it was new and there was large attendance. And now it has had a revival under the Sampson family. But there was a period in between, and it was towards the end when my position was essentially eliminated, that attendance dropped off precipitously, and they went through some difficult financial times. This is before the Sampson family owned it. It went through a series of owners, including Ladbrokes, which is a London-based bookmaking company. So I was there for several owners. But I remember the marketing director at the time was Doug Eichten, and he brought in a number of the alternate entertainment because he saw early on it was a different type of horse racing fan that needed a little bit more than just to bet a few races. And so at the end of every night, because they had night racing there at the time, they would put on a dry erase board down in the executive offices, the attendance, and it wasn't going well. And so a lot of people were criticizing Doug Eichten at the time for what he was doing and bringing all this alternate entertainment in. And I was standing there one night when he looked at the number and he said something to me that I'll never forget. And he said, "What would the number be if we weren't doing this?" And I thought,
Yeah.
you're right. And I think horse racing, horse racing beats itself up a lot. And unfortunately, um, should be more optimistic than they are, and does not look for the long-term fix. It's all about short-term. We've got to get this attendance up. We got to get this handle up, and then maybe they do things to their detriment, or they just copy things from other circuits that are not going to work where they are. And what I've loved about Canterbury, and it was true when I was there, even though it struggled early on, is it was about fan education, teaching people about the game, and then they grab onto parts of the game they like and become long-term fans. I wish the industry would follow a lot of what tracks like Canterbury do, but in truth, what works at Canterbury won't always work at Gulfstream Park and won't always work at Santa Anita. I think we've even seen a little bit of that play out. Some of the ideas that were working at Gulfstream came to Santa Anita a few years ago, and it just doesn't work here. Every market is unique in and of itself, but I'll always love Shakopee, Minnesota. I'm a lifelong Vikings fan. I'm a lifelong Twins fan. Minnesota is always where I was born, but I've gone where the job is. I had 5 years in Minnesota at Canterbury, 7 years at Boulder in South Florida, and now 22 years at TVG in Los Angeles.
And by the way, folks you don't know, married in the paddock at Calder. If I hope I'm
Yeah.
correct about that. So, a lot of interesting stories. Listen, I got another little surprise for you too, because there's been a lot of major changes you've seen in TV. You started in '99 at TVG, and there's been so many great changes. No, I don't have video of your first broadcast or anything, but a question on the bottom of the screen here I think is interesting. And just to let you know, Todd, and actually I haven't really talked about this a lot on my show because I want to talk about our guests. But I was a journalism major in college. I wanted to be Harry Carey. Was sort of my. I just turned 50 years old, just to give you an idea how old I am. So I know you've got me by a few years, but not too many. I wanted to be Harry Carey. I wanted to be a famous sports broadcaster. As you know, it's very tough to break. To get in the business on air in the newscast business, it's very fickle, etc. I didn't know anyone in the business. Someone said I have a good face for radio. That's when I knew. That's when I knew I was in
I've
trouble.
gotten that. I've gotten that before.
But anyway, so I've been in the broadcast room. Actually, here's something that also people on the show don't know, Todd. 1994, I interned at ABC affiliate at Channel 7 in Chicago. I was actually in the studio the day of the O.J. Simpson chase. You want to talk about a crazy newsroom that day? That was unbelievable. Anyway, let's talk
I
about
was
you. Do you know where? Do you
doing
remember where
the
you were that day?
doing the replay show at Calder, and I
Okay.
remember just off my office at Calder. So, and that's another thing that there's a generation that's grown up with that I can't imagine. I mean, it's weird for me to think that replay shows don't exist anymore. But the way you would follow an entire card after it took place was your local replay show. So one of my
Yeah.
big responsibilities when I went to South Florida at Calder was doing the replay show on Sunshine Network. So it was on the major cable station down there after the races. But when I first got there, it would be 6:30 at night, literally about an hour after the races got done. We were actually on a time deadline. By the time I left, I think it was on at 2:30 in the morning. So,
Unbelievable.
and just horse racing kept getting pushed. And I thought we did some great work there. And it's amazing the number of people that still come up to me when I'm in South Florida and said, I watched you at Calder and I love the replay show that we did there. But it's that night when the whole OJ Simpson it was actually the OJ Simpson chase that was going on. And
Yes.
we were doing the replay show, and I remember they had NBA playoffs going on, and it was just kind of a surreal scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is definitely you remember where you were moment.
For sure. So, what are some major changes you see? And by the way, Tom Espinoza, thanks for joining the show. I saw your question, Tom, and I'll bring that up later when we talk to Todd about TVG specifically. But what major changes have you seen in covering racing on TV, Todd? And I was always wondering. I think the jockey cam that you guys have now is absolutely fantastic. We've seen GoPros on, for workouts, but now to have a GoPro on or a jockey cam. When they're actually running the race, especially when you see a horse coming from behind and you have to see the holes they actually have to go through, you just gain so much more appreciation for what the jockeys have to deal with. Talk a little bit about some of the major changes you've seen in 20 years at TVG.
Well, in the same way that someone, if they want to have a horse racing show, can hop on the internet and do that and have their own podcast, and there's outlets for it. Technology has changed everything in the way
Yeah.
that we cover horse racing because the equipment has become so much smaller. We have what we call lipstick cameras that are literally the size of a lipstick, and you can put them on a jockey. You've seen the jockey camera that we're talking about and the results of it. It's only possible because it doesn't get in the way of the action, and so we're able to take viewers much closer to the action. Another thing aside from jockey camera is obviously the drone, and the drone gives you a unique perspective. I go back and forth on the drone. We had a production meeting today, and I said I'm getting ready to take a slingshot to the track and shoot it out of the sky because I think we get excited about these technologies and then we overdo it. And I'm saying TVG is guilty of that. And so I just gave some examples at our production meeting today. This was probably not a good time to use the drone. And people reached out to me, direct messaged me on Twitter, brought up some of the same concerns. And I was thinking the same thing. Even though I'm doing the show, I'm watching the show thinking, what does this look like to the viewer? What does this sound like to the viewer? Doesn't mean I'm always successful at it. Doesn't mean TVG is always successful about it. But the end result of how to cover horse racing is what works for the viewer. And while it's great sometimes to see that drone shot, I think you also have to remember you're taking people further above the action. you're taking them hundreds of feet above the action. People want to be right in the action. Some of the best programming TVG did early on was our all access shows. And now with technology, it's made it so much easier. But we had a microphone on the starter. And at the time at Hollywood Park, it was Gary Brinson. So you'd hear him as his crew would bring the horses into the starting gate. And we'd take you right down there. TVG, I think, kind of forced the hand of some other networks that cover horse racing, because they would drop in for special events, but they'd see what we're doing throughout the year, and they'd obviously have even more resources than we would, and they'd take some of those ideas. The greatest and probably the most seminal moment of how TVG changed horse racing and how it's covered was the Kentucky Derby with Fusaichi Pegasus. When you wanted to know how horses were working out at the Kentucky Derby, you read about it. You didn't see it anywhere. You read about it. So it was always someone's observation. Steve Haskin would probably be the most prominent of the writers that people would read leading up to Kentucky Derby. And he did a phenomenal job. There's no doubt about that. But there's something much different than reading someone's interpretation about how a workout went and now seeing it. So that year, TVG went to cover the morning workouts leading up to the Kentucky Derby. The show was obviously named, called The Works. And one morning, Fusaichi Pegasus flips over. And I should say flips over. He rears up, he goes backwards, and he kind of rolls and he gets right back to his feet. But we just had on camera for the entire world to see the favorite for the Kentucky Derby having this moment in the mornings. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, what's TVG? Because this was going to ESPN. It was going to networks across the country. But it was in that moment that the industry saw, this is valuable programming. This is a different way to cover horse racing. And so now everybody has work shows. You can get works on horses that are working tomorrow, and it's on demand. But that would never have happened without TVG going back over 22 years now. It's one of the first major things we did. And so technology's changed it, because now TVG can have these ideas and bring it directly to people on their time. You don't have to just tune in when the works are scheduled. The works are now available to you just at literally the click of a mouse or the touch of a button. So yeah, horse racing and how it's been covered, technology has been the biggest impact.
Well, I found this video that I think everyone will find very interesting, because Todd, when I was growing up in my formative years, this is the guy that I would watch a lot, and this is the show that I would watch. We're just gonna, if you don't mind, we're gonna watch about 45 seconds of Chris Lincoln on ESPN racing across America.
And hello again, everyone. I'm Chris Lincoln as we welcome you to Oaklawn Park. It's Derby Day in Arkansas. The folks here will probably bet some $6 million before the day is over on this, their biggest day of the year. We've got another big day, a show jam-packed with racing action for you. Let's take a look at the schedule we'll be presenting today. We'll start first with the 50th running of the Ashland Stakes at Keeneland to give you a look at the top 3-year-old fillies of 1987. Next, courtesy of ABC Sports, run earlier today at Aqueduct, the best Derby prep in the East, the Wood Memorial. We'll take a look at the top 3-year-olds in the East today. And then we'll be back here at Oaklawn Park, highlights of the 6 Racing Festival Stakes races run to date. And then the big one, live here, the 51st running of the Arkansas Derby, with right now the horse that looks to be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby, Demons Be Gone. And working with us here on our telecast today, one of America's great race callers, but at least the best on 2nd Avenue in New York City, Tom Durkin. Hello, Tom.
I bet you didn't know that Dave Johnson was a neighbor of mine.
He's off 2nd Avenue.
Okay, well, you're still safe with me.
Anyway, that's how a lot of us grew up, right? Watching horse racing, correct, Todd?
Yeah, it was Budweiser racing across America. And I know in my case, I tried to not miss a show. And then Chris Lincoln would do a recap show. But the one segment on those shows when they did a live broadcast that everybody looked forward to was the Budweiser long shot. And so they came to Canterbury one year for the St. Paul Derby, and the Budweiser long shot was Cheapskate. Cheapskate jumped up and won that year at 72-1. So the Budweiser long shot had a very, very good track record. But I remember when Chris Lincoln came to Canterbury early on, and they put him in a conference room downstairs in the executive offices where we had access as employees. And I knew he was in there, and I admired him and looked up to him. And so I found a way to get into that conference room and just say, I'm Todd Schrupp, and I really like what you do on the broadcast. He was very congenial and very nice. He also had a terrible joke about how cold it is in Minnesota. I'll just put that aside. But those broadcasts were things were broadcasts that I watched as much as I could because I just wanted to devour as much horse racing as I can. And
Yeah.
now, because it is available on YouTube, I just think anyone who wants to have a career in broadcasting needs to go back and watch how horse racing has evolved on TV, watch personalities that they look up to. Jack Whitaker was somebody when he did the commentary on the major networks for horse racing.
Yeah.
He's one of the best commentators of all time. And
Jim
so
McKay also. I just want to throw Jim McKay's name out there.
Oh, well, look,
names. They have races named after him on Maryland Million Day, I believe, as well.
Mike Joyce says this, and he's right. We come in on the shoulders of giants. There is always someone that has come before you, and if you do not recognize that, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. Yes, everybody wants to be new. Everybody wants to be fresh. Everybody wants to have the idea that no one's thought of. But the truth is, in some ways, in broadcasting, it's all been done to a certain degree before. But can you make it your own, and can you be a unique personality? But we all have a debt to those who came before us. I had the great privilege. So when I was at Canterbury and then went to Calder, towards the end of my time at Calder, there was an opening. ABC at the time had the Triple Crown, and they had an opening for a researcher. And I knew one of the producers on the show. He said, I'd like you to join us on the Triple Crown trial. It was Grindstone's year, which was either 95 or 96. But Jim McKay was still doing part of the Triple Crown. So being a researcher on the show, I was within a few feet of Jim McKay, and I was awestruck by it. He's one of the greatest broadcasters of all time. And so Jim McKay, I remember we were doing the Wood Memorial, and obviously, as you saw there, it's taking place during the spring. So you've come off this winter time in New York, this harsh winter. It's this beautiful spring day. And the horse that was the big focus was Unbridled Song at the time. And so he was in a trailer. I happened to be in there, and he's handwriting. There's no laptop to jump onto. He's handwriting on just a plain piece of paper his open for the show. And it's going to be on Wide World of Sports, and it's about the Wood Memorial. It's about Unbridled Song. And he writes several copies. He goes to lay the track down, and the copy that he left behind, which he didn't need anymore, I scooped up immediately. I have it to this day. And the fact that I have something that Jim McKay wrote on and shows, but to me in that moment, it showed that as talented as Jim McKay was as a broadcaster and what you see the finished product, people don't understand what goes into that. He was handwriting several drafts of what he was going to do in that open, and it's kind of lost. I don't think people sit down and write as much as they used to. Just handwrite something. For me, it makes a difference. I commit it to memory when I do that versus, say, sitting down and putting something on my notes on my phone.
Well, Todd, yeah, I'd like to talk about something that you said on air real quick. And by the way, just for all the viewers out there, Todd is willing to go on, quite a while tonight. So if you're anxious to get into handicapping, folks, listen, Todd's like me. He loves to talk. We love to talk about stories. Be patient, everyone. We will get to the handicapping. Todd, there's absolutely no rush. We love hearing from you. We appreciate all the time you have. I do want to bring up something that you said on air that hit home to me. I live 20 minutes from Arlington Park, Todd. And of course, a very moving moment happened at Hollywood Park in 2000, I believe 13. Correct me if I'm wrong, with the closing of Arlington, of Hollywood Park. I'm going to put a quote on the bottom of the screen, and I'm pretty sure you're going to know actually two quotes where these two quotes came from. You can tear a building down, but you can't erase a memory. And also, you said this, referencing someone who else who said this quote. It's supposed to hurt. That's how you know it meant something. Your speech, I thought, at Hollywood Park was tremendous. No, we're not going to show the whole speech, but I do want to show just 1 minute of the speech, if you don't mind, Todd, and just reflect very briefly, because unfortunately, Arlington is closed. We've seen some tracks closed, and as wonderful as horse racing is, I think it is a moment that I don't know if you regret the moment, of course, but it was a very special time on TVG. So let's go ahead and watch just about 1 minute, Todd, of what you said that night at Hollywood Park. Very memorable night for everyone. Uh, this is part of Todd's speech at Hollywood Park.
For the last 7 months, I've been trying to get some perspective on what it means when a landmark of 75 years suddenly ceases to exist. Enter the people of Portsmouth, England. Portsmouth, England has been the shipbuilding area for the United Kingdom for 500 years. And the unthinkable happened this past fall when it was announced that jobs would be cut and shipbuilding would cease to exist. In fact, this was the quote. It was determined consolidation was needed to keep the industry sustainable. Sound familiar? Horse racing has been going through the same process for quite some time now. And while the plight of this racetrack pales in comparison and time to what the people of Portsmouth may be going through, this much is clear. It's all relative.
Todd, I just thought that was a tremendous speech. It went on for a little longer, folks. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube. Todd, can you just very briefly, as I take that off screen, talk about the genesis of that speech, how long it took you to write that, and who you might have gotten some advice and help from, etc.
Well, if people are wondering, do we have teleprompter where you can look into the camera and the words are there? We don't. So I've always written things on paper and I've had a general idea of what I wanted. I didn't have it word for word, but I had some of those quotes that you talked about. The quote about you can tear a building down, but you can't erase a memory is a Living Color song. And then that other quote that you put up there, it's supposed to hurt. That's how you know it meant something. I had seen about a month prior, I had seen this amazing play called Peter and the Starcatcher. Oh, I get emotional thinking about it now. There were several lines in there, but I knew that the end for Hollywood Park was coming. So I wrote down, just organized my thoughts, and then spoke from the heart. And I wish more people did that, because you can tell. And I've found I'm actually terrible. I can pull off teleprompter, but I'm better when I can just speak from the heart. And that's what I've always wanted my broadcasting style to be: you and I sitting having a conversation and people listening in. And so that's when Simon and I are on, when Dave and I are on, or anybody on TVG, when you sit there and watch TVG, I want it to be as though a camera's just sitting in our conversation at the racetrack. And so when I had that moment at Hollywood Park, I felt a great responsibility, because it was going to be the last opportunity to say what Hollywood Park meant to so many people. I very rarely go back and look at my work. I let other people pass that judgment. But so many people have come up to me and had some kind words about that moment. And I've had a chance to go back and watch it. And I have to say, of the things I've done over the years at TVG, it's one of the things I'm far and away the most proud of.
Well, I thought it was outstanding. I had Vic Stauffer on this show as well a few months ago, and I talked to him about his last call. And I don't know if you know this, Todd. You probably do, because I'm sure you know Vic. But he actually said on my show that he originally, it took him a long time to figure out what he wanted to do, and he hadn't decided exactly on that last call where he just rambles through the names of the horses. It was fantastic. Only about 20 minutes before the race, he talked about it on this show. He also said he considered saying absolutely nothing. That consideration was taken off the books several weeks ago when they said no, that's not going to go there, the management of Hollywood. But he said it great, and I if we had more time, I'd show you the quote. But he said on air, he said, Howard, what can I say more than the horses can't say? So I thought that was fascinating that he actually considered just having the mute on the last call at Hollywood. Question from this is a great question from Tim. Would you like to address that question on the bottom there, Todd?
Do you consider yourself a handicapper or a broadcaster? I consider myself a handicapper first. This has come up in the most inane way, I think, for those, and I know there's a number of horse racing Twitter people out there, but I try not to get into back and forths. I like to direct message people and say, hey, I agree with what you said, or hey, I disagree with what you said, but I'm not going to bring this out in the public square. But Mike Joyce got into it with Inside the Pylons about our tickets on air and the rest of it. Let me speak for myself and not everyone else.
Sure.
I'm a serious horse player. When I'm asked to put together a $48 to $60 ticket, that's out of my comfort zone, because I like to play a bigger ticket. But the tickets we put on air at TVG are based on a premise. The premise is this: if you're working on a budget and that budget is maxed out at $60, how would you play that particular wager? Simply as that. So it's not something you have to necessarily follow exactly. You can take parts you like, as I always said, and play that. But I came in as a handicapper. I picked up the books by Andy Beyer. I met Steve Davidowitz. I read his books. I tried to soak up as much as I can from every handicapper I knew. I'm a horse player first. I just happen to really like television as well. And I ended up with the greatest job you could possibly get, being on TV talking about horse racing. But I play the races most every day, and I play it at a level that I think some people would probably be surprised at. I think there's a segment who thinks I'm a complete clown sometimes and don't think I take horse racing seriously.
Why would they possibly think that, Todd?
Why would they think that? And look,
it wouldn't be anything to do with Jerry Lawler, would it, by the way?
Yeah, well, look, that I'm very proud of. There's some other things along the way I'm like, ooh, that was a miss. That was a miss.
We'll get into a few of those questions coming up. I'm sorry to cut you off there,
No,
Todd.
but to say that, I'm a handicapper first, broadcaster second, but I get to be both, and I love it.
Well, you have some good scores. I did a lot of research. I've known you for a long time, not personally, of course, but I've seen you, and I did a lot of research for the show. Folks, if you want to hear about some of Todd's successes, just, Google it. You can read some articles and find out. I've got 2 more questions for you, Todd, and then we're going to do a segment I'm very proud of that I created for this show called 10 Minutes to Post, which is 10 rapid-fire questions. So 2 more general questions. We'll get to our 10 Minutes to Post. And then maybe we take a short break for the viewers and everyone, and then we'll go on handicap. I'm giving you a role that doesn't exist. I'm giving you president of U.S. horse racing. So President Schrupp, what 3 things would you change immediately? What do we need to do in this crazy game that we love right now? If you could just snap your fingers and say, let's change it.
Okay, well, takeout is an issue in every country, or in every state, I should say. But uniformity in just about everything. Uniformity when it comes to parimutuel rules, the type of wagers that we have state to state, and obviously with medication. The second thing is a schedule. When the NTRA first came into existence, they said immediately, we're going to get all racetracks to run on time and not on top of each other. And they couldn't pull it off. And the reason the NTRA couldn't pull it off is because the NTRA was not completely autonomous. And that is to say, you have to have complete power. In the same way that Roger Goodell, yes, he has to deal with the owners, but for the most part, he has a lot of power and can get the NFL to do things. Same thing with Major League Baseball, same thing with the NHL. Horse racing is not like that. The NTRA was dues based. In other words, the racetracks paid them money as partners. Well, how are you going to tell somebody who's paying you money, hey, you need to change this rule and you need to do this? No, they're going to do whatever they want. So that's always been a big problem with horse racing. But as simple as it sounds, having a schedule that everybody sticks to so you don't have races going off on top of each other consistently and intentionally is so far overdue. And then the third thing is, we've got to stop it with stewards. I mean, I get it, track to track, and there's some great men and women who are stewards. I'm not criticizing the role. I'm just saying the role needs to be brought into modern times. In some ways, horse racing was ahead of the curve. Everything is videotape replay when we're going to look at the foul. That was well before other sports. But this idea that you've got to have stewards at every racetrack making a decision is just wrong. It should be a replay center. And somewhere in some part of the country, maybe maybe it's based on the time zone. So you've got the Western region, you've got the Midwest, and you've got the East, throw in Mountain Time, whatever. But it should just be a video replay center, and it's the same set of stewards making decisions for all those racetracks when something comes up. Because stewards sitting looking out the window with their binoculars, that's a habit that we're in. They watch everything off the videotape anyway. So we need a video replay center, and we just need to overhaul just how the stewards interject themselves into the game and make sure that the rules are uniform. So to me, the overall theme, if I were in charge, is uniformity, medication, the parimutuel rules, and obviously the rules of the games themselves with the stewards.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And as you touch, I mean, is it a category one foul, category two? I mean, then you got to
Yes.
worry about that in different jurisdictions. It's just we could talk forever, but it's a nightmare. They need to change it. Great question from Puig at the bottom of the screen. Todd, when TVG posts tickets, what percent do you and your colleagues actually play, would you say? Maybe not a
Well,
percent, but you touched on that a little bit already.
yeah, I mean, again, in my particular situation, I play every day. I'm also very fortunate because I'm the host. I don't have to give out a ticket. I did give out a ticket a couple of weeks ago, and it was because Christina's husband had a horse running in a race, and it's
Right.
just, she would have to single her husband's horse, and that doesn't mean he's always going to win. So she said, "Would you mind doing a ticket?" I said, "No problem." So I proceeded to go 0 for 5. And the best part is I put 10 times more personally into that particular play, and it was still just as bad. It was not a good day. Which happens. As far as the entire staff, yeah, everybody plays to a certain degree on the staff, but it's just like walking into any other racetrack. Some play a lot more than others. Dave Weaver and I are a lot more than others category. And there's people in the middle. There's people down here. But I will tell you, it's like, again, it's a ticket that is advice. Yes, you can send it in as is. Yes, they do hit. Um, I happen to have the biggest pick four that was ever given out in the history of TVG. It was back at the Ashland in 2003 at Keeneland. And the background on it, our boss had met with us, and we had a $50 limit on the tickets. And Matt Carruthers was at the dinner, and he said, "Can't we make it 60? Because you can make more tickets that way with a $60 play. In other words, you can construct more tickets than you can with a $50 budget." So our boss said this, "Here's what I'll do." He goes, "It's Friday. I'm going to give you guys the weekend. You can have Saturday and Sunday, but you have to hit at least one ticket, and then we'll keep it at $60." So on Saturday, which was the Ashland, I proceed to put together my Sistine Chapel pick four tickets. It's just one of the, and every horse player knows this. You could spend $600, have the worst ticket, and then all of a sudden now you're giving $60, you have the best ticket. Just everything fell right, and the time was great. So it came back $12,000, my on-air ticket. And I still have
Wow.
people that come back and say that. So I kind of hang my hat on that about that was a great moment for me. And then there's a lot in between. But what I want to emphasize is, again, it's just advice. Yeah. Was there this great moment for me with that particular ticket? There's been a lot of bad moments where the tickets weren't great, but compare it to your own opinion and then make your decision and put it in. And I don't know how this will be perceived, but I'm just going to put it out there anyway. When it comes to like a $2 pick six, if there's a giant carryover, and there aren't many $2 pick sixes anymore, this is kind of pre-rainbow. But I always said when there was the $2 pick six and we had a big carryover, and then we'd have a ticket on the screen from a particular analyst, that there could come a day where that ticket hits, but the pick six carries. And so that,
Of
not
course.
everybody wants to play the way I want to play. I want to play every day. But someone who's putting an on air ticket out there maybe doesn't have the means or want to play every day. So
For
that's
sure.
something to consider as well.
Well, Todd, I have one more question before we get to our 10 minutes to post. Then we're going to handicap. Now, one of the main reasons we have you on is because we're celebrating California racing on Saturday. It's Cal Cup Day, and listen, I know there's probably people, and we have a lot of people, by the way, watching. And if you're watching, thank you for watching, and please make sure on the top, top right-hand corner. I just got to do the opposite. Top right-hand, you know what I'm talking about. Top right-hand corner there. Please put your chats in the live chat. But, Todd, I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear your opinion on some of the bad things that have been going on in racing. We're not going to go there. I don't want to put you in a tough situation. I know people in the industry. I know for a fact that you need to be careful on what you say, and a lot of people in California have to be careful on giving your opinions on certain issues. So we're not going to talk about Baffert. We're not going to talk about issues maybe with Peter Miller or other things. I want to focus on this question on the bottom of the screen because I love California racing. I've been to Santa Anita. I was at the Breeders' Cup when I met you. That was my first time at Del Mar. There are a lot of great people in California racing, fantastic people that you've known for a long time. Can you very briefly, last big topic question, talk about some of the horsemen and or women and or people in management that have impressed you the most and helped grow and make California racing what it is today?
Well, for me, it's been stops along the way. I mean, I could tell you in Minnesota, I could name some people that come to mind that have influenced my career to this day and were great for the sport there. J.G. Preston was up in the press box when I was at Canterbury, gave me fantastic advice. He also broke the news to me. They were eliminating my position. The late Dark Star was one of the most interesting media personalities I met on any circuit. And I know Paul Allen can tell Dark Star stories, but there's a lot I took from him, advice, and maybe a little bit of his broadcasting as well. When you go to South Florida at Calder Racecourse, Ken Dunn is one of the finest racetrack executives I ever had a chance to work with. My immediate boss, Mike Cronin, who was in marketing, was one of the most thoughtful people that I've ever met in horse racing, and pulled off miracles down there. It's a shame what ultimately ended up happening to Calder. And that's where I started to get to know more horsemen and women down in South Florida. Like when I was at Canterbury, I met a young 20-something Mike Smith coming up from New Mexico. Met Steve Asmussen when nobody knew who he was. And so Steve and I are still able to talk about that to this day. When I went to South Florida, I met a great late horseman now, Frank Gomez, who was phenomenal. Trained Smile, trained a Cherokee Run, and got the most out of those horses, but didn't like to leave his circuit, so they went on to other horses. So I have great experiences along the way. And the same thing has happened here in Southern California. And now that I've been here for 22 years, there's people who have passed away. There's people who have come and gone. But I will say just, the names that you see on a daily basis, Doug O'Neill is as genuine as you'll find from anybody. Doug O'Neill is you and I. Doug O'Neill started out as a fan of horse racing, became a trainer, has won 2 Kentucky Derbies, and he's just one of the guys. I was going up to see Dave Weaver in the suite area at Santa Anita, and I was locked out and I couldn't get through a door. And all of a sudden, Doug O'Neill saw me struggling, and he walked down the hallway, opened it, and he always says to me, because I'm from the Midwest, he's like, Midwest is best. And Doug O'Neill's like that with everybody. Carla Gaines is a phenomenal horsewoman. There are so many people that I can, and that's the thing. You were talking about, hey, we're not going to talk about the bad part of the sport. Look, I have no problem talking about the bad part of the sport and giving you my opinion on it. But I do want to emphasize this. I would not have dedicated, let's see, it'd be 22, 29, about 35 years of my life to something that I didn't believe in. If I thought there was something untoward going on consistently on a larger scale and was hurting horses or going against anything I believe in, I wouldn't be in this industry. Are there bad people? Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that with Jorge Navarro. We're going to see it more with the trial coming up with Jason Service. But I just want to say, overall, the people that I have met over the years inspire me, and they're at all levels, from someone who's a groom to a trainer to an owner to a jockey. They're my heroes. People who grow up and love sports as a kid, they love baseball players, they love football players, they love basketball players, and I love those sports too. But I grew up admiring jockeys, trainers, and horses.
I mean, Bo Derek comes to mind as someone, if you don't know what Bo Derek does for horse racing in California, the people that saved horses in the horrible fires at San Luis Rey. I mean, we could go on and on of the unbelievable people in California. All right, Todd, it is time for one of my favorite segments. Our guests love this segment. I even got a little graphic for it. It's time for 10 minutes to post. 10 minutes to post. Todd, by the way, I've got a resume nearby that I'll be talking to you later about.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll tell you, if this was 25 years ago and TVG was around when I was getting to the business, you guys, I probably wouldn't have gotten a job, but a resume would have been going in your direction. And who knows, maybe this teaching thing that I'm in my 25th year of teaching, but I'll tell you what, if someone offered me something on air at TVG, no disrespect to Round Lake High School and anyone that's listening, I'd have to strongly consider it, because I love talking horse racing.
Well, then
Todd,
make sure you find your way to Keeneland Spring Meet. We'll have you on for a race. We'll do an official resume reel.
Oh my! Wow! All right, everyone, we're gonna hold Todd to that. We just heard that.
Yeah, no, we'll have you on for a race. Yeah.
My goodness!
I've been on your show. You're going to be on my show.
Oh my! I should just drop the mic and end the show right now. Thank you, Todd. I'll tell you what, that's amazing. I really appreciate it. All right, we'll be in touch with that. I was actually at Keeneland opening day this past fall and saw the drone. So when you were talking about the drone, I know you were talking about. All right, now if it's capable for Todd Schrupp to give a very short answer,
I'll try.
sorry, just kidding. Very quick rapid fire answers. Are you ready? There's 10 of them. Here we go. Todd has no idea what these are. Here we go. First moment you fell in love with horse racing.
Seeing Easy Goer.
Wow. Real good horse. Best or most memorable horse racing event ever attended in person?
Zenyatta winning the Breeders' Cup Classic against the boys.
This is unbelievable.
Yes.
You just get chills thinking about it, don't you?
Speaking of Bo Derek, when they honored Zenyatta the following season at Hollywood Park after she'd won probably the same race like 3 years in a row, the Vanity or something, they handed out hats that said Zenyatta Unbelievable. And I saw Bo Derek after the races, and she took my hat and she took in black marker and marked out and made it believable. I'm like, you're right. It was believable. We were all there.
That's awesome. By the way, Tom Espinosa is a great, not only fan of the show, but a friend of mine. He lives in San Francisco. Tom, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. I think I could hold my own a little bit. I've got some experience, so I don't know. Maybe
Sure.
you never. You know what? Life is crazy. You never know what might happen.
I'll challenge you though. It's not going to be what are they calling it now? Rabbits and ice cream. Yeah,
that's right. I'll tell you what. Give me the IFV. Give me the whole setup. We'll rock and roll.
For sure.
Craziest weather. Now it's snowed at Keeneland. You've been through some horrible rainstorms, I'm sure. Anything come to mind while you were on air, actually at location?
Yeah, it's snowing. I've been to since TVG started, so I've been to about 22 spring meets at Keeneland. I've been to 22 fall meets at Keeneland. The only 2 times that it snowed at Keeneland was the spring meet. And so sitting in the middle of the spring in April and having it be 4 inches of snow was the most wild weather I've had at the track.
I remember, and actually, if I recall, there's been some races that have actually been run while it's heavy snowing at Keeneland. Just surreal.
Yes.
It's crazy. One of my favorite questions that my guests enjoy: bucket list track or race day event you'd like to attend in the world you've never attended?
I want to go to Longchamp, and I want to see the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in person. I had the privilege of going to Royal Ascot, and I want to see more European racing. I've had the privilege of going to the Japan Cup a number of years, and it's phenomenal. But yeah, I want to see Europe's biggest race, the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe at Longchamp.
By the way, just a heartfelt message from C Money real quick. Gene Picola, he's doing well. He's recovering, doing well. So thanks for the shout out there, C Money, with Gino.
Here.
Most embarrassing moment while on air. Is there one in particular that stands out? Should we bring up the Emilio Estevez story?
Well, that was amazing to me. Like, I look back at that in amazement. But I will tell that story then. And look, there's been a lot of embarrassing moments where I may be looking at the wrong page and talking about the wrong race, but I'll say that. And that's the whole thing. You're going to get that from me. I'm going to go, whoops, sorry about that. Doesn't mean I haven't looked at it. It just means I'm not doing a great job at keeping track of things that day.
You are human, last time I checked.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So it was a Friday night, and they had Friday night racing at Hollywood Park, and it was great because it would get a younger crowd out there. They had dollar beers, dollar hot dogs. So Ken Rudolph and I are on air, and it's a 4-hour show. And that's what people don't understand. They're like, why are they not just talking about racing? Because it's a 4-hour show. Pace yourself. So, and it's the same thing with horse players at the track. We talk about other things. We talk about the game that's coming up. So anyways, the story of 80s movies comes up, and we started talking about movies that Emilio Estevez was in. And we get in the conversation, and then I think I said it. I don't know if Ken said it or if I said it. That I don't remember completely. But the phrase, I wonder whatever happened to him, comes up. Next thing I know, I look over, Emilio Estevez walks out on a cell phone on the track apron and waves at us. So I love
that story.
I ended up finding out he's a great horse. He loves horse racing. He's a horse player like us, and we exchanged numbers, and I got to talk to him.
Folks, I don't think people, and I'm not saying I'm not a professional, on-air talent, but I have been behind the scenes. I know what it takes. Folks, there's so much that goes into a broadcast. I don't think people, Todd, have any idea how much work you guys do, the producers do, to just get ready for a show. The fact that you can also handicap races too, and these stories come up. I mean, and I'm a teacher, right? I don't know what's going to happen on a daily basis. I mean, I have my lesson plan, right? I mean, so there are some similarities. A student might say something, something good or bad might happen, and you have to adjust. That's sort of the fun thing, I'm sure, about being in your business. Emotional honor moments. I'll just mention two things with TVG, and then I'll just let you answer the question. When Simon Bray talked about his medical diagnosis, that was very emotional. And then Paul LaDuca, when he announced that he was leaving, and that was very emotional as well. Those two things just come to mind. But is there a particular emotional, good or bad, on-air moment that just comes to mind right away to you?
The thing you have to know with me, and that is I cry at sporting events. Like if my team loses, I get emotional and they're out of the postseason. But there are just things that happen along the way that really get to you. Just watching Art Sherman's retirement, I wasn't on air that day, but Lafitte Pinkai passing Bill Shoemaker for the all-time winningest rider, it took me back to a lot of things. As you get further along, things become more emotional because I'm 35 years into this. And so I've watched people come into the game and now retire, or watch people come into the game, maybe even pass away. So there's a lot of those moments over the course of the years. You obviously saw one with Hollywood Park that you mentioned, but a lot of these retirements get harder and harder for me because I was like, there was this young person that was there, and now they're calling it a career, and it's just hard to believe that that's happened. But yeah, it gets more emotional. It seems like each and every year.
By the way, someone mentioned Les Onaka in the comments as well. Just another person that's just touched a lot of hearts. Craziest thing a fan requested or said to you while on air live at the track? Because I love, Todd, that people yell stuff at you, right? And like 99.9% of broadcasters would just ignore that person.
Ignore it, right?
You've actually like taken on those people and like said fun things. Is there something that you can remember just that was just nutso that you actually responded to on air?
There's all kinds of ones. There's some that are not friendly. There's some that are friendly. And so this is kind of a weird situation. So we had a setup at Belmont Park, and that's when we would travel and be on site in New York. And it was the day that Lost in the Fog was running, I think, in the Woody Stevens. It was the Belmont undercard. And my boss now, who used to be our online producer, Kevin Grigsby, is producing. And so they've got us at this set, and it's an area, it's a tent that they would use for the pre-race handicapping show, but we had it as our place. And so they had it taped off. So any fans were way over on the other, were, probably about 40 feet away, whereas normally they can come pretty close to where we are. And this guy just was making the most vulgar suggestions at me and like all these, and I'm like, it didn't seem like he knew what TVG was. And so I told our producer, because I can't talk while I'm on air and I don't want to draw attention to it, so I had to wait till commercial break. I'm like, Kevin, you've got to get somebody up there. And then he starts describing what the guy looks like. I'm like, how do you know what he looks like? You're sitting in the TV booth. And he goes, I guess he's an undercover cop.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, but
Oops.
the guy it was just one of those things, like he had started drinking at the beginning of the day and he was there as part of the security detail. He had no idea what TVG was, but I thought I was taking it personal. And the rest of it. Then there was one time, Brian Cox, who is the nicest, and Brian Cox, from the NFL, Miami Dolphins linebacker, Chicago Bears in your area, one of the nicest human beings you will meet. Whatever you've seen on field persona, that's different from the Brian Cox you meet in person. And so he worked with us for a time, but he would also have people who would come up and say things. So we were at Hollywood Park. He's on with me, and this guy is being really rude to Brian. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? And so we go to commercial break, and Brian goes, listen, I'm not going to come to your work and give you a hard time like this. If you want to talk to me off camera, I'll talk to you off camera, but you better stop. And the guy didn't stop.
Wow.
So our producer at the time was Kevin Grigsby again. He goes, "What's going on?" I said, "Ryan Cox is about to unhook and go over to this guy." I'm like, "You better send security for the guy. Like he
Yeah.
has no chance." So there's been, but literally, I have to say, there, if there's 100 people that come by, 99 of them are really nice, and then there's that
Yeah.
one. But for me, I'll engage that one, and I make it
That's
part
great.
of the show.
Uh,
And then
uh,
final,
Go ahead.
uh,
People love listening to you,
the
Todd. I'm sure there's people just. I have to laugh because Todd, I guarantee you, and this has nothing to do with you. Just people are not used to having guests that want to talk this long and just shit. There's people are like, when are we handicapping? Like, folks, we're gonna handicap when we handicap. This is Todd freaking Schrupp. We're gonna let him say what he wants to say, people, and we're live,
well,
Todd. So go ahead.
and I actually think I have some good opinions on the California Cup card, so you'll
We'll
appreciate
get to
that.
it. By the
So
way, when Todd's at Keeneland, folks, that set and you can speak to this is pretty close to the fans. Like you can, I don't, you know the setup there at where you are usually at Keeneland because I've been there and I've seen you there. Their set, folks, is like 15 feet from people, like maybe 20 feet. I mean, they have security there and whatnot, but some locations you are pretty darn close to the fans, aren't you?
and you should be. It's got to be like College Game Day on ESPN
Yeah.
to give like a good comparison, to be right in the middle of the action. But there was a guy who used to come up at Hollywood Park, and he could come right up on the rail, like 10 feet away, and we get to know people, and it'd be the regulars who would come out. And so one day, um, he's alive in a pretty good pick four, and so we put a camera on him cheering his pick four home, and he wins. And it's a nice moment on the show. And so
Yeah.
the next day he comes back before we're on air and he goes, "I want to thank you guys." I'm like, "Why is that?" He goes, "Well, last night my dad, who I haven't seen in 5 years, was watching the show and saw me, and he called me." I'm like, oh my gosh. And
Wow.
so I said, "Where's your dad?" He's like, "In Northern California." I'm like, "Oh, what does he do up there?" He's like, "Oh, he's in prison." So I was like, okay, that's a little different. Don't get that every day.
Oh
But
man.
apparently we're big in prison as well, which is
Listen,
good.
you'll take the ratings wherever you can get them.
Yeah, that's right.
You'll take the share the TVG share in prisons very high.
Yeah.
Favorite horse, Todd?
I told you I fell in love with Easy Goer, Zenyatta, and Deep Impact. I'd put on that list. So give me three of
Oh,
them:
deep
Easy Goer,
Japan.
Zenyatta,
We're going
Deep
Japanese
Impact.
now. All right.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
he was phenomenal.
all right. Two final question, folks, and then we're gonna either take a break or handicap, whichever Todd wants to do. In 5 years, finish this sentence. I know this is me being the teacher now. In 5 years, I see myself writing more or talking more on air about.
Philosophies. I have a tendency when someone tells me something that I find I can learn from, I like to share with the audience. And I think I'm doing more and more of that because there's less of my career left versus what's behind me. So I know I'm heading towards the final chapters of my career, and I will find myself writing about and talking about more things I've learned over the years that I think are important and can help other people.
Wait a minute. Where are you going, Todd? At the end of the year, we want you on another 25 years. What are you talking about? I don't know if you guys caught that. He slipped in a little. I might be
Well,
retiring at some point in the next.
look,
What was that
because
about? Wait a minute.
no, because I play the horses a lot. I need the job for a while, but I'm just I'm thinking, wow, it's been 30 to 35 years, and so I've just definitely gotten more. I've gotten more reflective, I should say.
I understand. All right. Last thing, we're doing a little word association. All right, I'm gonna give you a place or a person. I would say one word, but we'll say two words for Todd Schrupp. So describe this in either one or two words. Are you ready?
Yes,
Here we go. Rattle real quick. Santa Anita,
majestic,
Del Mar,
where I grew up,
Hollywood Park,
gone but not forgotten.
Simon Bray,
My work husband.
By the way, someone had a question. I have to bring it up. Let me see if I can find the Simon Bray. If I can't find the question, I remember what it was. It was from Tom. Someone asked, did the comedic banter back and forth, was that developed or was that natural between you
It's
and,
beyond natural. And that's the thing, you
okay.
brought up when he was out with multiple myeloma. It was the
Yeah.
hardest year I had. I can work with anybody that they put me on air with. We've got many great people at TVG, but when you have somebody who can finish your sentences and they're not there
Yeah.
for a year, that was a tough year.
Dave Weaver.
Belly laughs.
Oh, I thought for sure you'd say ice cold.
Oh
That's
no,
good. I tried to lead you right into it, Todd. You didn't follow me. That's okay.
Nobody makes me laugh like Dave Weaver. When I think of Dave, I think of laughing. I wish everyone had a Dave Weaver in their life.
I totally agree with you. Brittany Urton.
Immensely talented.
Michelle Yu.
Immensely aggressive.
By the way, I've met Michelle a few times. I've had her on the show. Michelle is exactly what you see, folks. She's just fantastic.
And that she'll say anything, and I like that. Like she'll just say what's up. You know what I should say? The word is unfiltered.
And in a good way, by the way. And by the way, the work
Absolutely.
And I'm a little biased because I met Michelle and I know Michelle a little bit. The work that she did during
TVG,
the Breeders' Cup.
Yes.
The work that she did for the Breeders' Cup work shows in the morning, outstanding. She did one shot where she was literally chasing like Aiden O'Brien, who was walking like 20 miles an hour. You know the shot I'm talking about. And she was like, the camera was like walking backwards, and she was like trying to keep up with Aiden O'Brien. Only people know in the business know like how difficult that particular shot was. Michelle is fantastic. Flavian Pratt. I'm sorry, you were, what was the word?
The future.
Oh, fantastic. Bill Shoemaker.
The greatest.
I got just a few more. Lafitte Pinkai.
Oh, my hero.
Charlie Whittingham.
Wish I had met him.
Two more. Richard Mandela.
Glad I've met him.
And Edina, Minnesota.
Where I was born, but definitely not the side of the tracks that I live on.
Todd, thanks for all the questions and answering everything. Do you need a 2 or 3 minute break, or would you like to just go right into handicapping?
Let's roll right into it. I'm gonna go do some shabu tonight, so
okay.
I'm gonna just miss happy hour, but I do that for you.
I really we can go relatively quickly. I really appreciate it. Some people asked about Ken Rudolph. Ken is great too, by the way. And for you viewers, we're going to get more TVG people on the show.
Yeah, I'll make sure,
because they're in California, and also I've had a little trouble getting some contact. But Todd is going to get me in contact with more people from TVG. I've had Michelle is not employed by TVG, but she's done work for you. I've had Nick Hines on the show. Viewers, we're going to get a lot more people on TVG on the show. Todd will help us get that done. I promise that to everyone. All right, sure. Todd, let's get into handicapping. All right, we're only about an hour and 10 minutes in. It's all good. Listen, folks, you talked about why you need to work and do your job because you need to fund your handicapping. Look, I'm a little bit the same way, right? Why do you think I have this podcast that I make? I think I'm up to $5 an hour, Todd, with my podcast at this point. I'm a degenerate at heart. I don't know if you would call yourself that, but I know I am, and so we need to talk about these races. So let me go ahead and talk about as I bring up the sequence. Todd, very quickly for the viewers, tell everyone in case they're joining us late what's happening on Saturday at Santa Anita, please.
Yeah, so there's it's Cal Cup Day, so a day dedicated to California bred. So it's one of those great traditions. You talked about Jim McKay having his name on a race in Maryland. He actually was the impetus behind state bred racing days, and so this is our big day. So Santa Anita management with the jackpot pick six pool at about $1 million right now has made it a mandatory payout on Saturday. It'll start in race number 5, 10 races in all, and the pool is expected to be between $4 and $5 million.
It's going to be a great sequence, and Todd promises, he gives everyone your word that it's not going to be hit tomorrow, so we'll make sure that happens as well. Todd, I know I'm not too familiar maybe with the way that we handicap on the show. My picks are H on the bottom of the screen. Of course, T is Todd. I did not know Todd's picks. Todd, you can verify this for the crowd or for the people watching. I did not know your picks until about a few hours ago. You certainly didn't know my picks. We have some similarities. We have some differences. The first race, and I like the fact that this is the first race, Todd, because we definitely need to see the board in this race. You got some first-time starters. They're going 6 furlongs. It's for 3-year-olds. By the way, every horse in this race, in these races, folks, state bred. So I'm not going to say state bred. These are all Calbreds all day long. These are restricted 3-year-olds, 50,000. They're maidens going 6 furlongs. Todd, you're going with some first-time starters, as am I, and you like the best, the 3 Make Mine Wine for Jonathan Wong and a very good young jockey, Mr. Herrera.
Yeah, Diego Herrera, and he has been fantastic. I started watching him at Los Alamitos, and I'm not surprised at his success coming over to Santa Anita and Del Mar. But to me, this level, state bred maiden claiming 50,000 down to 45,000 lends itself towards first time starters consistently. The 3 best first time starters in here are Make Mine Wine, Smiling Goodbye, and Big Gun. I ultimately made Make Mine Wine our top pick in here just because this horse has a pedigree that goes beyond California by overanalyzed, a distorted humor mare, a homebred for Tommytown Thoroughbreds. They're one of the top operations in California, and they'll go to sires outside of California. They have mares who are accomplished with horses who've run outside of California as well. And then Jonathan Wong, he's as consistent of a trainer as you'll find in all of the country, and he's very capable first time out. So this race should be won by first time starter, and I'm going to make Mine Wine my top selection in here for Jonathan Wong, given the pedigree. And then the 5 Smiling Goodbyes by Smiling Tiger for Harris Farms. The thing you got to remember on this day, because it's dedicated to Calbred, you have top operations who want to win on this day. Harris Farms is one of those operations, so they'll obviously be well represented. Tommytown Thoroughbreds, the same thing. So you got 2 of the biggest breeders in California with these 2 first-time starters, Make Mine Wine and Smiling Goodbye, and they can place horses realistically too, offering up for the maiden claiming price first time out.
And the other the other horse, the 2, this is the one that I have in top for Tim Yakteen. Big Gun, Juan Hernandez in the saddle. Tim Yakteen, by the way, everyone. And again, Todd, for the most part, we won't have our faces on when we do this, just so people can see the PPs a little bit better. Plus, people don't want to see my face for sure. Your face, I'm sure they'd love to see. Tim Yakteen, some stats here. Last 5 years, first time starters in a maiden claiming. 14%, everyone, not bad. And Dean Peterson on the 5, by the way, Todd, I looked it up through Formulator, 19%, first time starter, main claimers last 5 years. And also, I watched the workout of the 5 last time, Smiling Goodbye, with Abel Cedillo, worked with blinkers on in that work on XBTV. I'm assuming the 5 will be in blinkers also on Saturday. Basically, Todd, we're telling them, I'm going to put us back on screen here. We just don't like the horses that have run in this race. The only one that really, I guess you consider, is the 8, Arthur Spooner for Ryan Hansen. By the way, husband of the wonderful Michelle Yu. Ryan Hansen is a very good underrated trainer, but these horses that have run just don't do much for you, do they, Todd?
No, I mean, when you get 0 for 4, you're usually going 0 for 5, 0 for 6. So
Yeah.
to me, it was all about the first time starters. If I was going to be a little bit generous with a horse that's run before, I'd look at Stay Lit, who comes to Tim Yakteen's barn for the first time. The last race was up at Pleasanton. It was not great. It was 3rd in a field of 5, so only be 2 horses home. But it was open company. Stay Lit is trying state bred competition for the first time. Stay Lit is the only horse that's raced that I think has any modicum of a chance in the 5th at Santa Anita, but it should come down to one of those first time starters that you and I like.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're like me. You definitely believer that the board will tell, especially with first time starters and especially in California, correct?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Michelle Yu, who you're talking about, she's there at the track, so the simulcast audience gets to hear her. She gets to look at the horses in the paddock, and it's the same thing with our coverage on TVG. Simon Bray out there, he could look at a first-time starter and tell me if they're ready to run. So not only watching that tote board, but seeing those horses in the post parade, watching them in the paddock prior to that is going to be huge, especially with someone you trust who knows what they're looking for.
I just want to mention Big Gun is by Mr. Big, a very good California sire, out of a Orientate mare. So obviously bred to be very quick. Orientate, a fantastic sprinter. All right, let's go on to the next leg. Now this is the start of the pick 5, which we usually do pick 5 conversation on this show, but we obviously need to talk about the pick 6 for Saturday. So this is the second leg of the pick six. This is, I believe, the first. This is the first. Yeah, no, actually, the second. This is the second stake of the day. The first one within the pick six. This is race six. It is a mile and eighth. It's the Unusual Heat. What a great horse that was. Unusual Heat Turf Classic. They're going for 200,000. Real nice purse, Todd, on the turf, mile and eighth. And you are going. Actually, we are both going with the same horse in this race. As I scroll down, the number 8, 3-1 morning line, Indian Peak for Ruben Alvarado, who's taken over the training for Peter Miller and Johnny V. And what a huge impression Johnny V has already shown, Todd, at Santa Anita this meet.
Yeah, what a treat to have him out here full time for this meet. You know, you mentioned you had that question, you know, who are some of the horsemen and women that you've met in California that you really respect? And I said, you know, across the board, there's a lot of, but I've gotten a chance to know owner Gary Barber, and he's part owner of Indian Peak. There is no one in the industry who gets it more than Gary Barber. He's one of the top horse players in the industry with the amount of money he bets. He's one of the top owners, but overall, he's just a good human being, and he has the best in horse racing at heart. And you see that with the way he conducts himself as an owner really across North America. So he's part owner of Indian Peak. I know last time out, Gary felt this horse would actually be okay on the main track, and it didn't work out. The horse ended up being last. And so now we're back on the turf. But the last couple of tries, 2 starts ago, this horse was against Open Company in the Grade 2 Seabiscuit handicap. If he runs that race, there's nobody who can beat him in here. He was third at 28-1 with a little bit of trouble. And like I said, Gary felt he was going to outrun his odds 2 starts ago, thought maybe he'd even run well on the main track last time out. But now we're back against Calbred Company, and this is where he should be. The race goes through Indian Peak. If I were to give credit to one other horse in here, it would be Camino del Paraiso. He's a 9-year-old who has a great resume and consistently keeps winning races, but you do wonder at some point when you get up there in age. But it seems like with the turf horses, you have a lot of older horses who extend their careers, and Camino del Paraiso is one of them. But he is without a doubt very capable. He's been facing Open Company as well. The last time he was in against Calbred Company, it was at Del Mar last summer, and unfortunately he clipped heels and didn't finish the race. So Camino del Paraiso, with the company he's kept and the company that Indian Peak has kept, I say class on the grass. To me, this is the 8 Indian Peak and the 5 Camino del Paraiso.
I am using the 5, and again, I'm sure we have some new viewers to the show. I do have I play an ABC ticket through Ticketmaker. Todd, I'm not sure if you use ABC Ticketmaker or not, but for those of you that are new to the show, let me just put myself on screen real quick. The race day blog that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, folks, it's very inexpensive. It's only $12.99 for the entire month. So, Todd, people receive my picks and selections, ABC tickets, also spot plays from other tracks throughout the country for only $3 a card, basically $3 every Saturday is what it costs. And folks, I do have the 5 Camino del Paraiso on my ABC ticket. I have that horse as a B as in boy right now, Todd. So I'm not a huge fan of 9-year-olds, to be very honest with you, but the horse is classy, can absolutely win. I'll just briefly mention 2 others that I would consider. Margot's Boy, who I have in second at 4-1. We'll go in back here. Very consistent. Has no problems with the distance, Todd. Some of these I'm not so sure want to go a mile and eighth. This horse can clearly go a mile and eighth, so I do like Margot's Boy for that reason. And then I don't like the 3 for 21, by the way, but I think he's an honest horse. And the other one I want to mention is the 1, Whooping J, 6-1. For George Papadromo and Joe Bravo. This horse was just claimed, Todd, for 100,000. You'd have to think the main reason they claimed this horse is just for this reason and just for this race. And this horse does have numbers on the go back and recently that are good enough to win. Distance may be a little concern, but I love Joe Bravo. I think the guy can still ride, Todd, and I think he's got a shot. I would say this would be a spread. Would you agree with that? Or are you pretty confident in your picks in this race?
No, I had to look ahead on the ticket, and I think the race down the hill is the spread. So I had to lighten up here. Do you make a great case with those other horses? Yeah, I can buy into it. I think you can make a case for Alligato, the 3 in here, who's stretching out. Yeah. Could be any kind of horse, even though he got started late in his career. And I thought the 7 Ferrariano was an interesting long shot. there's a different approach, obviously, depending on the wager. If you're live in a jackpot pick 6, let's say you catch a price in race number 5, this, as you said, is the start of a pick 5. So maybe you play the pick 5 differently and open it up. But on my Rainbow 6, I'm going to narrow this race down. I
Okay.
have to because of the races that are coming up.
By the way, folks, Allegato, who I bet last time, Todd, and there was a brutal beat. I don't even want to talk about it. I don't know if you were on air for that race or not. I know you missed some time from on air, but Allegato in that last race was scheduled to go in a mile, folks. The race was taken off the turf when they had all that rain before the Malibu, and they decided just to run the horse anyway, going 6. Allegato absolutely wants to go longer, and he got Flavian at maybe like a middling price. Hello, do not, and like Todd said, folks. Don't leave Allegato off your ticket. I know you don't see that horse in my top 3, but again, he's a B for me. By Kitten's Joy, by the way. So distance should not be an issue. Although that is a big ask, I would say, to go from 6 to a mile and 1/8. All right.
Yeah, but great observation about that race last time about why it was 6 furlongs. Very, very sharp.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go on to race 7. This is the only race left in the rest of the card here that is not a stake race. Race 7 is 6 furlongs. It's, of course, state breds, 4 years and up. This is an optional 20 N1X. Todd, I thought this was a very, very, very difficult race. We're going to show everyone your pick 6 ticket at the end of the show here, and I was a little surprised you weren't deeper, so you must be smarter than me, because to me this is almost an all ball kind of race, and I hate the all button. You like 2. Scary Fast Smile 7-2, Mark Latt, Tyler Bays.
Yeah, last time out at Los Alamitos, the one thing about those Los Alamitos races, they work 2 ways. One, the really good form at Los Alamitos, you can't overplay when they come back to Santa Anita. And the really bad form at Los Alamitos, you can't overplay when they come back to Santa Anita, because they can turn it around. So I bring this up because Scary Fast Smile was a favorite last time at Los Alamitos and tanked. I say throw that out. You look at the previous race at Santa Anita, it was okay, 3rd in starter allowance, but there's some very good races against Calbred Company. He was untouchable in the spring of last year. And so I think Scary Fast Smile returns to that form admirably. On the inside was claimed the last time out. George Papadromo's been very, very active at the claim box. Excuse me.
We're good. Go ahead.
You mentioned the $100,000 claim in the previous race. His barn's going well. I decided to lighten up. I went with the 2 and the 1.
Todd, very quick, because I think this is very important to talk about. I'm going to bring us back on. We need to have a 30-second conversation, because from a handicapping perspective, I think it's important. This is optional 20. I personally feel like any horses that are, now I realize some horses are in for the tag because they're not eligible, to not be claimed. But in general, my opinion, Todd, I do not like horses that are in for the tag. Any personal opinion on that in these types of races?
Well, you got to remember, a lot of times a horse, and I know a horse player who's very sharp, and he told me that early on. He doesn't like a horse that's offered for the claiming price. But I think optional claiming races have evolved, and there's usually an exception. The horse can stay at that level if they're entered for the claiming price. So essentially, remember back on May 21st when Scary Fast Smile got by this condition? He can come back for the condition because he's entered for the claiming price. So to me, it's a good thing in this case.
Okay. Now listen, the horse has numbers on the go back that could absolutely win this race. And he's also, by the way, don't mind that bullet 59 handily. That never hurts either. So I didn't see the workout. By the way, Todd and everyone else out there, on these kind of big days, I'm absolutely going to get a workout report. There are many out there. If you're not familiar with workout reports, check them out. Because even when you see a bullet work, that might not be, an A or even a B plus rating. It's very situational. And the workout reports, by the way, in California, I could go on how wonderful Bruno DiGiulio and Andy Harrington, and I can just go on and on, how the great job they do. In this kind of race, I'm going to go with the 8, Crash Corrigan. The only I don't like is the 0 for 6 at Santa Anita, but listen, he has 5 out of 6 in the money. This is a nice gelding who seems to be improving. I like Drayden, but Hernandez is, you could probably make the argument, maybe a little more successful lately. But to me, it's not about the jockey situation. To me, the horse is improving, has a nice outside post. There's other speed in the race, blah, blah, blah. I like Crash Corrigan. Any other thoughts before we move on in this race, Todd?
Well, you're not taking my advice on a couple of things. The optional claiming price, which I hope you'll come around on, and giving too much credit to that form at Los Alamitos, be it good or bad. So you're betting
Okay.
that horse, the A Crash Corrigan, essentially based on his Los Alamitos form, because prior to that, this horse was not that much. So if we were at the track and we're trying to decide a ticket, I'd be begging you to not put Crash Corrigan
Oh,
on our ticket.
I think I just lost my appearance on TVG.
No,
I
I
just lost
know.
my street cred from Todd
No,
Schrupp.
but that's the whole thing. That's what I love. Horse players
Yeah,
don't always agree. I hate the shows where it's like, "Oh, that's a great pick," and "Oh, you have a wonderful pick." No, not everyone thinks that someone else has a wonderful
sure.
pick, and so I'll say, I don't like Crash Corrigan.
Absolutely. No, listen, valid point. I could be completely wrong about Crash Corrigan. I'm spreading. I'm literally. I think almost I'm going to win this race, guys. I mentioned before I don't like the all button Todd because to me that tells me that I have no good opinion on the race. And then if that's the case, usually I skip a sequence. But I can't help myself this Saturday, so I'm probably going to be very spready in that race. All right, let's get to race 8. Now, race 8 is a race that Todd mentioned a little bit. They're going down the hill, and Todd Schrupp, thank God they're down the hill again because I
I
love
agree.
down the hill racing. I don't even want to get into why they. I don't know why they really. Well, I know why, but I don't agree with it. Whole other
Appearances,
story.
yeah,
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 I know. Anyway, I love the fact they're going down the hill. Everyone loves the down the hill course. This is the Sun. Let me get the official name that I wanted. The Sunshine Millions Turf Sprint Stakes. 6.5 furlongs down the hill. 4-year-old and up. You're going with a horse that I don't know if you saw the morning line, Todd, before you handicapped. I will honestly say that I did not see the morning line before I handicapped. And John White, he does the morning line, correct out there, does a
yes.
fantastic job, Todd. This 12 to 1, you must be chomping at the bit because I do not think this horse will be or should be 12 to 1. A very interesting possible long shot, Nardini for Andy Mathis and the re-emerging, let's say, Kent DeSormo.
Yeah, the ups and downs of Ken DeSormo. And I was with you. I did not have the morning line when I handicapped all these races. And then
Yeah,
when I went through that second pass and finalized the notes on the show, then I had the morning line. And I was surprised as well. Nardini's not going to be 12 to 1. It's not a bad morning line. It's just the horse, it's a big field. But two
sure.
starts ago, this horse already beat our one of the expected favorites in this race, who's going to take a lot of play, Warren Showtime. One very simple angle about the down the hill races at Santa Anita is turf milers do very, very well when they come back to 6.5. So the
Yes,
race that Nardini met Warren Showtime in was the 1 mile Solana Beach. Now, some would go back with Nardini and look and say, okay, well, this horse has been in turf sprints before, has been 5.5 on the turf, has been 6 furlongs on the turf, has been 5 furlongs on the turf. No, this horse has not been down the hill. And Nardini, I think, absolutely fits going down the hill. On top of that, we already know that Nardini can beat one of the favorites in Warren Showtime. So Nardini beats Warren Showtime at her game, a mile on the turf in this race that you're showing, the Solana Beach. And now she's going to meet her trying the down the hill course for the first time. And I'm projecting that she's going to handle it perfectly. Warren Showtime is a good example of horses that can handle the about 6.5 furlongs or normally milers on the turf. Warren Showtime has a tremendous record over the Santa Anita turf course, has a tremendous, and the opportunities given to go down the hill, has had some experience and done well. So sign me up for Nardini at the price. Warren Showtime is a must use on those jackpot pick six tickets. The horse you have to pay attention to, and oftentimes horse players miss a horse who gets in a big field off the also eligible list, is the 13 She's Devoted. As of right now, She's Devoted is not in. But we're talking about this race on Saturday on a Thursday night. So I included She's Devoted in my top 3 picks. I'm using She's Devoted on my Rainbow Six that we're going to show. But ultimately, someone's going to scratch out of this race, and it's probably be one of the horses I have, which will take my ticket from 115 down to 96 and under the budget that you asked. But I am Nardini at 12 to 1, Warren Showtime, who the race obviously goes through. And then if the 13 She's Devoted gets in, she's another horse that I'm projecting is going to be fantastic going down the hill at about 6.5 furlongs.
yeah, it's like She's Devoted gets in. Now Rispoli's named. I don't want to take the time to go through the field unless you know off the top of your head. Is Rispoli named on any other horse there, Todd? If you could look
He
at
is
your
not.
bookies.
He is
Okay,
not.
so
So
if she gets in, obviously, then it'll be Rispoli, which you might not. That might lower your
oh
price,
wait,
by the way.
hold on a second.
Oh,
Nice Ice. He is on the 7 Nice Ice.
oh,
But
okay.
I will tell you this. I would think that if there's a scratch, he'd be going to the 13 she's devoted. And I'm not saying Nice Ice scratching. I'm just saying if there were an
Right.
opportunity for him to go elsewhere, I think he would. But yeah, he is on the 7. So I had that
Okay.
wrong initially.
Yeah, it's a very lightly raced 5-year-old that would have a shot. You mentioned Warren Showtime, who, by the way, folks, that was Warren Showtime was the 7 horse in that replay when Nardini won. That was not Warren Showtime best effort. This horse, Todd, is just amazing. I mean, she's such a warrior. She's won 814,000. I have to say, I've bet against her a bunch of times, Todd, and all this horse does is run. I mean, what a fantastic job that Craig Lewis has done with this horse. And Hernandez knows the horse well. I think there's enough speed to set it up for Warren's Showtime. And in case there is not, my second choice is another horse that is on the outside, but the inside. I know Todd knows what I mean by that because you're better off with the outer post down the hill, folks, than you are on the inside. Legs Galore is very fast. She's very good. She is coming off a layoff, but it's Phil D'Amato, so I have no problem with that. There is other speed in the race, but here's another turnback, Todd. You mentioned Nardini on the turnback. Here's another turnback, Legs Galore, who you would think would be able to handle this distance and gets nice outside post. Any thoughts on Legs Galore before we move on?
Yeah, that's the thing about the angle of milers doing well down the hill. A lot of horses in this particular race fit that category. I just personally, I know she's lasted at a mile in the Friends Valentine, but she was kind of all out to last at that. I just think it's going to be a hot enough pace, even as fast as she is. I have my doubts about her in that final half of furlong. So, legs galore, that's going to be a post time decision for me as far as my Rainbow Six, and ultimately if I leave her on. I hate the fact that I'm probably leaving off the horse that has the lead, but I really do believe they're going to come and get her.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty fast paced. I don't. I guess Legs Galore probably does need the lead, but I like Warren Showtime. I hate to chalk out there, but I just think she's the best closer in a race with a lot of speed. And as you can see, I've got Nardini third, so I'm definitely using that horse as well. Let's go ahead and move on to the penultimate leg of this pick six on Saturday. It's going to be a great card. Folks, I see we do have a lot of people commenting, but based on the time constraints and we got to get Todd out of here, we're not going to take too many more comments. But please continue to type in the comments there on the screen because I know our viewers are bantering back and forth on their picks. So that's a great thing about these podcasts, Todd. This next race, it's the sprint. It is the Valparaiso Cal Cup Sprint Stakes. There is a horse in here, Todd, that is super duper fast. And when he's right, he is very good. And we both think or hope that he is going to be right. I have a feeling, Todd, the number 3 Brickyard Ride will be a single. And on a lot of people's pick six tickets, I think it's hard to find a single in the sequence. We'll talk about that in a minute. This horse has run some huge races, but is coming off a layoff.
Well, and I think that's a good thing. There was a time where I thought, first of all, it was a pretty full campaign last year with 7 starts, 9 starts the
Yeah.
prior year. How you view Craig Lewis is going to go a long way, and how Craig Lewis does is going to go a long way in determining this jackpot pick six, because we were just about Warren Showtime in the previous race. He comes right back here with Brickyard Ride. I mean, this could be maybe an obvious double, back-to-back Craig Lewis double. But I think his most likely winner would be Brickyard Ride, because in the sprint division, it's not as if Brickyard Ride has won a bunch of graded stakes races out here. He did have the grade 2 San Carlos last year. He loved Santa Anita, 6 for 9, but a lot of it has been accomplished against Calbred. Some of it has been accomplished at a lower level. But to a quarter mile, maybe even to the half, there's very few horses in Southern California that can keep up with Brickyard Ride. That'd be true if he went elsewhere. He's just a lightning fast horse. He's also like Warren Showtime, and something that you mentioned. I find myself playing against him a lot. I find myself playing against Warren Showtime a lot. But now I find myself respecting them coming on this Cal Cup day. Brickyard Ride is a must-use. Is this horse a single? I like him better fresh, And so we're getting that. So having not raced since late August, I think the workouts indicate he's ready off the layoff. He is going to be the one to catch far and away. But I ultimately made this a 2-horse race when it came to the jackpot pick 6, because I think it's a perfect draw for Colt Fiction on the outside. Colt Fiction gets to go, first of all, on the outside of Brickyard Ride and the rest of the field so he can make his own trip, and his best trip is to sit just off the pace. His best trip also happens to be the distance we're going here, 6 furlongs. And look at, we talk about turnbacks and distance from a mile, milers on the turf to about 6.5 down the hill. Well, sometimes it's more nuanced than that. It can be turning back from 7 to 6, 6.5 to 6. In the case of Colt Fiction, just look at when he's done that. Just a few starts ago, he went from 6.5 back to 6 and 1. The previous win prior to that, April 10th to May 7th, he turned back from 7 to 6 and 1.
Yeah.
6 furlongs is his game. Was he second at Santa Anita to Brickyard Ride and beaten rather soundly, beaten 4 3/4 lengths? Yes, but he was also clear second in that race. And the key to me is that this time around, where he had the rail against Brickyard Ride, who could clear him, now he gets to be on the outside and stalk Brickyard Ride. And if Brickyard Ride comes back just a little bit, Colt Fiction gets first jump, and Colt Fiction can beat him. After all, Colt Fiction has kept fantastic company. Just a couple of starts ago in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship against Dr. Scheibel. I'm going to go too deep. Brickyard Ride, I don't fault anyone for singling him, but if he comes back, Colt Fiction is the horse that catches him immediately.
Todd, I got to put myself on screen because I'm going to make a bold statement here. I like Brickyard Ride, but I'm going to give you the long shot of the day for me, of the sequence, I should say. My long shot of the day of this sequence, folks, and people have watched this show. Listen, I'm wrong all the time, just like everyone. I gave out Mishriff. I've given out Obligatory. I've given out some very nice picks on this show. Folks, I really, 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 if it's not going to be Brickyard Ride, and I have to say, if he runs his race, he's probably going to win. I really like Let's Get Lucky, the number 6 for Brian Corner.
Wow.
For Brian Corner and Drain Van Dyke. Now you got to allow me to show one replay here. Why do I like this horse? I'm going to go full screen here and explain, Todd, because I'm putting myself out there on a limb. So let me explain, all right? Newly turned 4-year-old, right? This is a young up-and-coming horse. Did not do, he was in the Echo Eddie. He ran okay early in the year. The last 2 races have been vast improvements. 2 back, stalked, blew by the field, including Principe Carlos in this race. Last time I want to watch this race, it was an open company, and it was Del Mar. Now, first of all, who did he lose to? I'm going to show you the chart here, Todd, if you don't recall this race. I know you watch a million races. The winner was Took Charge. Who's Took Charge? A nice horse. You see the buyers. Open company was running for Baltus, was running in the mid-90s. Took a little step back last time. Lost to a nice horse called Arham, who used to be a horse for Todd Pletcher. That might be a name that you know, Todd. The horse that came in second, Escape Route, ran on Malibu Day and lost to a horse called Notre Dame, who upset that field and just wired the field. But Escape Route ran another 96, ran a 96 before that, and also has run against Flightline. Escape Route is a very nice open company allowance horse who, if he was in this race, Todd, I think would be 2-1. So what happened with my horse, Let's Get Lucky? I'm going to show everyone the replay very quickly. He's the 8 in this race. And although there isn't a lot of trouble and he breaks fine, what you're going to see is he gets caught up in between horses. The 8, you're going to see, you see him right there in the yellow. Let me back up a little bit, Todd, because this is an angle I like. You see right here, everyone, the 8 right here in the yellow is in a perfect spot, right? But then on the outside, you see 2 horses rushing up, and you see Drain's hands. He's forced to go there, Todd, and now he's in a tricky spot. He's in between horses, not getting the most uncomfortable spot, chasing the favorite in a very fast pace. I'm going to go and fast forward. So he's used early. Look how much he's been using here, Todd. You see his hands are moving quite a bit. He's asking a lot. This is even before the quarter pole on the turn. Right here, I was about to say this horse is done, right, Todd? No, the horse sticks around. You can see he's right here. He's still not giving it up. He only loses by what? Maybe a length and a half, 2 lengths. Todd, I think this was a very subtle, tricky trip because he was used a lot earlier than he wanted to be. He's going to get the same trip that you project for your horse, the 8 Cold Fiction, where he's going to be on the outside. Look at the fractions he's been involved with. I'll just end up by saying this. If Brickyard Ride, Todd, I'll just go back on camera. If Brickyard Ride falters at all, let's get lucky. First
Okay.
run. Okay, first run. Maybe Cold Fiction might be right on his butt, but let's get lucky. Very sharp. And by the way, I'll tell you how sick I am. I watched his last work on XBTV. Loved it. Galloped out like a train. Let's get lucky. 12-1. What do you think, Todd? There you go.
Look, I never want to talk anyone off a long shot, and it's not as if you just had a couple of reasons and I could poke holes in them. That was some outstanding analysis. I do want to point out some things that were interesting in the previous race. You were trying to go down a road with Drayden Van Dyke, which you didn't go, and now you're relying on Drayden Van Dyke in here. And also, did you notice who Let's Get Lucky beat in his debut?
I didn't at his debut. Who he beat? Crash Corrigan.
Crash Corrigan.
I love it. That's what we call in the math world. That's the transitive property right there, where the horse A beats B and B can be. That's funny. I didn't notice that. Listen, I just want to, just like you, I want to go with someone who maybe can beat Brickyard Ride. And listen, I don't think there's any guarantee with Brickyard Ride because he's super fast, but there's gonna be a lot of horses that are not gonna be that far off, hoping that he just takes a step back. All right, let's get into the last.
Sure,
go ahead. Sorry. No,
and
go ahead, finish.
Principe Carlo had a great return to form, and he used to be a horse who was as good in this division with Cal Cup sprinters as anybody. So he's kind of an interesting price too. Again, I love the case you made. There's some things that I would disagree with.
Sure.
So don't want to talk to anyone at 12-1.
Here's C Money's thought on my long shot. There you go, Todd.
I could hang out with C Money at the track.
All right. Let's go to the last race. And Todd, let me just say before we go, well, let me just show the last race, and then I'll throw kudos your way. There's a horse that I really like in this race too, and I was very disappointed when I saw the morning line because I thought maybe I was getting a price, and it's actually the horse you have in third that I have on top. I'll let you go ahead and talk. You've got Big Novel, by the way. This is 3-year-old restricted fillies. They're on the turf. It's the Cal Cup Oaks. 200,000. You're going with Big Novel, John Sadler, Johnny V to close out the pick six.
Yeah, Big Novel. This is what she's always wanted to do, and that is be on the turf. And now she gets an opportunity to run for a big purse against Calbreds and on the turf. So Big Novel, I absolutely, being by Mr. Big, son of Dynaformer, is going to take to the surface. And last time out, she was much further back than I think anyone anticipated in that mile race at Los Alamitos. And so it's, again, assessing that Los Alamitos form and trying to determine what it means coming to Santa Anita. I think you threw out Big Novel's last race, and it was still a good second. She's going to be better on the turf. Aluthra, the 6, is still a maiden, but an equipment change of blinkers on. And I like her last effort where she finished second. And I think as a maiden, she's going to step up in a field that's light on experience anyway. And then the final horse that you mentioned, Vivacious Vanessa, she was fantastic in her debut at a mile on the turf. She's trained by Gary Mandela, who is a former colleague of mine at TVG. He was one of the original on-air people at TVG. And obviously, being the son of Dick Mandela, he's been around a lot of good horses, knows what it takes to get a horse ready for a spot like this. Last time out, they took a shot in the Golden State Juvenile. She just simply put at this point, she's not as good on the dirt as she was on the turf. But this move here, where she was one horse beat in the early stages, and she was also kind of bet that day, that showed that she had a lot of ability. So I can see where you have Vivacious Vanessa as your top pick. But when I get to this final race, I want to have a little bit of coverage if I've done everything right so far in the jackpot pick six.
We have to show the viewers this replay. The 2 is this horse right here where you see the arrows is the horse we're speaking of. And Todd, you've watched a lot of races. I'll just let you talk through. I thought she got studied a few times, and her finish, by the way, the final quarter was 23-1. I looked it up on Formulator. Was fantastic. I mean, you can see the hold here. Go ahead and just talk through this the last eighth three-eighths of a mile here.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, she had a post position, and this is kind of a move that Joe Bravo makes. That's kind of endemic to Joe Bravo. For those who know Jersey Joe going back, he likes to make a wide sweeping move on the turf coming out of the turn. In other words, he likes to blitz people in a quarter of a mile, and then a horse has to hang on. Instead, as you said, this
Look at this
horse
turn of
was
foot, by the way.
absolutely
Wow.
finishing and had plenty left. Vivacious Vanessa. And again, it was a moderate pace, and that was just the first start of her career. Any improvement off that, and she's the horse to beat.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the PPs off the screen. I think there's enough speed in the race. I love the visual. I'm like Simon Bray, with the respect. I'm not nearly as good a handicapper as him, or no. Well, I don't know about that, but I love listening to yourself and Simon especially because I'm a visual guy like he is. I mean, that 61 buyer could have been a 65-6 buyer, and she won so easily. And the last one was on the turf, or on the dirt. I think they just wanted to try see what happened. I'm tossing that out completely. I love Vivacious Vanessa. I was hoping to get more than 4-1 morning line. I think there's a lot of other speed in that race, Todd. That's more unproven. And this is one of the few horses that's actually proven on turf and the best closer in the race. So all those, I mean, if I were single to that horse, like at the end of a pick six, and I had to rely on that, I'd be okay with that. I'd be like, you know what, I'll take my chances. Todd, here's your pick six. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you brought up Les Onaka. One thing about Les Onaka, his approach to the pick six, he always singled the last race. That was his thing. So I wouldn't, if you do a Les Onaka ticket, that's a pretty good one there, singling Vivacious Vanessa.
I'm not going to single her. I'm just saying I feel strongly about her. I like her a lot. By the way, I went with the other speed in that race, but I'd also use Todd's horse, the one, as well. Very quickly, Todd, and let me just say this because we're going to let you out here. We so much appreciate the time on the show. You've been awesome as expected. I will be, if you can stay on for 10 seconds after my show's over, I could talk to you, or I'll email you to get some other contact information on other people. And you can be the Pegasus, by the way.
I am. In fact, I'm going to have 2 weeks in Florida during that time. I'm going down for the Pegasus and then staying there for the Holy Bull. And I'll be in Florida 3 times that 2-week period, back for the Fountain of Youth, back for the Florida Derby, and I'll have 2 visits to New Orleans. So I hope anyone out there who's watching the show right now that's going to be in those areas on those days, come by the set and say hello.
Breaking news for everyone out there. I will be at the Pegasus. Todd, I think we might have set something up. I will be there, sir. Good. I will be there. We'll talk. Anyway, here's Todd's ticket. He's spending $115.20 again. Todd, do you play ABC? I mean, this wouldn't be your own personal ticket, right? I'm assuming, or would it?
No, here's my thing. Everyone has a different approach. I do like the ticket maker that you're talking about. It's not for me.
Okay.
One of the best horse players I ever met, Mike Maloney, who is also one of the biggest horse players in the country and a great advocate for horse players. I said, what's your philosophy on tickets? He goes, just hit it. I'm like, okay, because I felt guilty about playing one ticket for a sizable amount. Yeah. But every time I step out and try and play multiple tickets, it doesn't work for me. I end up being that guy like, I had this horse here, but I didn't have this horse here. If I put them together. So I'll play one ticket. And you did ask for me to keep it under 100. I want to emphasize the 4th leg there where it's 2, 4, 9, 11, 12, 13.
Yes.
The 13 is She's Devoted. One of those horses is going to scratch. So ultimately, this ticket will be $96.
Okay, there you go. So listen, I wasn't going to complain that it was over 100. Again, and you do a great job on TVG. Listen, no shame towards anyone who has a $36 budget, a $24 budget.
That's right.
We just want everyone to play the ticket. It's a pick six. It's mandatory. You can hit it for a low. It's only 20-cent increments. You can absolutely hit this ticket for less than Todd and I are giving. And again, these are just our opinions. Todd, you can see he's 3x2. So you're going sort of thin early and hoping maybe to get a price late. I'll just go ahead and show my ticket. I have strong opinions on the end of the sequence. I think the second and third leg to me are the ones that are very tricky. That is the race down the hill and the allowance race that I said I could hit the all button on. I really do like Brickyard Ride and Let's Get Lucky. And I would just go ahead with the Vivacious Vanessa and the other speed horse. I can't recall the name. So I'm a little bit thin late. But again, folks, there's a lot of different ways you can play this ticket. if you had to single for someone on a cheaper budget, last question, Todd, would you single Brickyard Ride if it held your feet to the fire, or would you maybe single like Nardini and take an interesting long shot as a single?
I
A
mean,
la
look,
Simon Bray. Simon Bray would
Yeah.
single Nardini, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the courageous move, is to single Nardini. You know where I actually would probably single? Because I'm with you. There's just something about Brickyard Ride. I don't know what it is, and I hate to be missing that big long shot. Indian Peak. I would go back to Indian Peak and race number 6 and single
That's
him.
actually that's not a bad call, because if he runs his race, I think he's gonna be
He's the
very
horse.
tough,
Yeah.
very tough to beat. Todd, where can people find you on Twitter, sir?
At Todd TVG. So at TODD TVG. And I like to follow a lot of people back. I first check and make sure you're not saying anything too crazy. And then I follow people back. I also enjoy being people's first followers. So if you've never been on Twitter, you just want to kind of follow people and see their opinions and not necessarily participate in conversations. And I don't usually get caught up in a lot of back and forth either. I like to try and be people's first followers as well. But I'm so happy I got to make my first appearance here on Triple H. Howard, you do an amazing job, and I can't wait to get more TVG people on your show.
I really appreciate it, Todd, and I appreciate you coming on. Any final thoughts about Saturday or anything coming up on TVG you want to promote?
Look, the fact that we have holiday racing, I love Monday at Santa Anita. It's Martin Luther King Day. They get a great crowd on hand. So pace yourself a little bit. The Friday card is the Friday card. Saturday is great. Shove it in. But Monday is going to be a good card. So don't forget about the holiday racing on Monday. But I know, some people are skeptical of California racing day in and day out with field sizes. Not this weekend. Saturday is going to be fantastic. So I'm looking forward to not only participating as a horse player, but covering it for TVG. And I can't wait for all the big Triple Crown prep races to come up. Looking forward to traveling back to Gulfstream Park and down to the fairgrounds in New Orleans. So, yeah, looking forward to 2022 overall. So stay safe and well, because it's all going to come together at Keeneland. You're going to be on the show.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you at Gulfstream. I'll say hello. We'll talk. Actually, we'll if you could just stay on for literally 30 seconds after we go off air here, and just stay on this link and we'll talk. Todd, usually I take people, off the screen on my show. You've been so awesome. I'm going to leave you on the screen. This has been Todd Schrupp, Howard Kravitz, the HHH Racing Podcast, episode 106. Everyone, thanks for watching the show. Crush those Pick 6 tickets at Santa Anita this Saturday. Take care, everyone. Good night.